Hello there, everyone. I'm big as shit. Wow. It's not till you see yourself on camera that you're like, God damn. I'm going to start out with giving my disclaimers. This is going to be a very, very, very charged up discussion for both obvious and non-obvious reasons. After the disclaimers, I'm going to just jump right in because I don't want to expend energy that I don't really have, you know. I'm very pregnant, as you can see, so I have to be very mindful of my energy reservoir as to not... just a moment. Because y'all are definitely going to hear Sharu being Sharu. So I'm going to just give y'all a minute to get in the room. I'm going to give my disclaimers. And then I'm going to just jump right into the essay. Thank you. If you haven't read the essay, it might be a little hard for you to keep up. If you read the essay and you didn't understand some things, this is the perfect place to be because I'm going to be fully leaning into every single thing that I talked about in that essay. I'm going to talk about why I wrote the essay, the importance of it in this time and space. And we're not going to answer any questions tonight because as tempting as it's going to be, the discussion alone will take about an hour or two, right? Question and answers, that can go into another 2 hours. I don't have that kind of energy. So the question and answer, as you guys may or may not know, is actually going to be tomorrow on Zoom. And if you, yes, you can ask your questions here, but it will not be answered. I'm just going to go in and screenshot them. And I might even create an additional form on my website or in my story, whichever one I have the energy to do, for you guys to put your questions there if anything pops up after watching the recording, if you're not here live or if you have to step away, because I can't do both in one sitting anymore. I used to have that kind of energy, but I don't have it right now. And I might get up to get snacks because I'll be hungry. But sometimes this kind of exchange feeds me, so I might just get so into it that I feed myself energetically and I don't need to compensate with tangible food for the moment. So we'll see how it goes, but just be ready for toddler interruptions, pee breaks, and food because that's what's going to be happening. All right. Now, my disclaimers. Like I said, you can ask your questions here, but I will not be answering any questions. And I know that when you guys, when I say certain things, the first thing is going to be like, but wait, would this count as that? And would that be an example of this? Like, you're going to want to do that, but not today. That is for tomorrow. Now, if you want to attend tomorrow's live stream, that'll be $20. You have to send it to my Cash App, my Zelle, or my PayPal. And then I will send you the Zoom info tonight into tomorrow. So that'll be that. What else? Yeah, I think that's a lot. Oh yeah, and then the bathroom, the snacks. Yeah, I gave all my disclaimers, so we can just jump right on in. Before, and if you want, you can write your questions down. You don't have to put them in here or wait for me to create a form on my story or my website. You can just jot them down and bring them to the question and answer tomorrow. So what I'm going to do before we start is I'm going to put my Cash App for both donations and for the question and answer sign up so that you guys can send that while watching, after watching, whatever you prefer, so that I don't have to keep saying it because I don't like repeating myself, to be quite frank. I'll probably look like a grandma from this angle. Okay. And if you need my PayPal, if Cash App doesn't work for you, I can send you my Zelle and my PayPal, but that's also in my stories. So you can just go to my Instagram stories and get the link that way, or you can privately DM me if you can't do that for whatever reason. If you already paid, but when it was for Saturday before, is it the same link? Yes, so if you already paid for it, and you know, when I kept rescheduling it, it's going to be the same Zoom information, just a different date. So, yes, it'll be the same. Okay? So, let's jump on in. I'm excited. I feel like I just want to kind of break open that door of these kinds of conversations being had. I know there are plenty and many of other, not only priestesses and seers and mediums, etc., but woman scholars that are just not doing this caliber of work, or not releasing it, or maybe they're waiting for something to happen before they do. I don't know, but I encourage all women scholars that have the capacity to grasp this caliber of work. Can I help you? What? How you just gonna barge in here and just leave? See, that's what I'm talking about. Do we join here or Zoom? Okay, let me give another clarity check, or whatever. So, the discussion for today is going to be a review of the essay, okay? It's going to be a review of the essay. If you have questions, like unique, personal questions about this topic as it pertains to your curiosity, as it pertains to your life, as it pertains to your own experiences, you have to sign up or register for the question and answer private Zoom tomorrow, because I'm not answering questions tonight. Like anything that pops up in your sphere, write it down tonight, because I'm only going to answer it tomorrow in the question and answer, okay? So I've pinned my Cash App if you want to just send a donation, or if you want to attend tomorrow's question and answer, which is only $20, okay? If you need it sent through PayPal or Zelle, DM me or go to my stories, because it is there right now. That is tomorrow. Are there going to be people that didn't hear that part, that just come in late or whatever, and they're going to be asking a slew of questions? They're not going to be answered. So if there's anybody that's here from start to finish, do me a favor and make sure you let those people know that I'm not answering any questions during this Instagram live discussion, because I just won't have the time to. This is a pretty meaty essay. And I get really thorough when I get into these kinds of things. So I just can't balance the two. Okay? So, title of the essay is Changing Your Energy Signature at Will. Okay? And the reason that I decided to write this is for a variety of reasons. One of which being the shifting of your energy signature plays a huge role in karmic clearing, or clearing your karma, right? When you successfully clear a karmic theme or clear some kind of karmic debt, your energy signature actually changes in composition. When you have a spiritual awakening, your energy signature changes in composition. When you give birth, your energy signature changes in composition. Some of those effects can be more long-term, and some of them can be temporary or more short-term. I'm going to lean into all the many ways and variations in which that could happen. I'm going to lean into like my definition, my basic definition of what I would call certain things. You're not going to find work like this anywhere else. You will see the term energy signature and timeline jump and karmic contracts in articles and maybe even in some books. But the terminology that I'm using is unique to my work, and only people that have been a part of the fulfillment code or got eye readings or worked with me in any other personal regard will understand that terminology. And I can't recommend any books, because these are things that I've pulled from my own experiences, and I didn't really study anything. I mean, when I first woke up, I was very into Osho, but he didn't teach me all of this stuff because I'm naturally a scholar. So I didn't need a bunch of books to come up with a cumulative understanding of this stuff to then present to you guys. And that's why I can lean into it this deeply. I was just led to learn about prana. Then you speak of this. I feel in alignment. Yes, and prana has a lot to do with karmic clearing as well, as spiritual wealth, as I typically use the term. So, like I said, this essay, I encourage you guys to read it. If you haven't read it, maybe turn this off and watch the replay, because you might be confused, or you can just follow along, whatever your preference is. And it can be found on Medium, link under my bio. I have a link tree. You can find the essay. I think it's the very first button, now that I think about it, since it's my most recent work, okay? So changing your energy signature at will. Attunement to your baseline energy signature. Changing its composition to timeline jump. And its role in influencing us to unconsciously consent to karmic contracts. Now, this isn't to say that we all unconsciously consent to karmic contracts. Some of us do it consciously, but most times in the event that we are saying that we're oppressed, or saying that we're victims, or saying that we've been abused, or saying it, usually it's a product, like that outlook is a product of us unconsciously consenting, because nothing that's happened to us wasn't something that we didn't choose. We just weren't conscious of the nature by which we chose it, or the cosmic consent, which I'll go over in this essay, is on more of a micro level, meaning just like thinking about the reason that you incarnated, or the reason that some people incarnate and they experience all this suffering to learn certain things. When you first get here, it's like, damn, the world is an evil, unsafe place, and why would I have chosen this? I would never choose this for myself. But like I said in my last live about abortions, in the Roe versus Wade one, which, by the way, did not expect it to do that many numbers. Goddamn, that means that y'all are feeling this and y'all are thinking about this, but ain't enough people talking about it. So I discussed it there. But if, like I said in that live, 9 times out of 10, if we were left with the responsibility and the courage necessary to see certain karmic contracts through to completion, we probably wouldn't do it, because we wouldn't want to go through certain painful things. We would probably pacify certain things. I mean, look at how we live our day-to-day lives. Can we really be trusted with our conscious minds and our human complexes and all that other egoic stuff to actually efficiently clear a karmic contract on a micro or macro level? Probably not. There's probably a 1% of us that would actually thrust ourselves into something that is absurd to the naked eye, but actually very, 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 very rich as far as what it can draw out and allow us to clear and release, okay? So, we are going to start with the first part of the essay, which is, what is an energy signature, okay? And how I'm going to go through this is going to be similar to the Roe versus Wade abortion thing that I did on it prompting us to clear our karma as women. If you haven't seen that, go see that too, because I lean into a lot of these things, but I don't link it to energy signatures, but energy signatures are involved in it. Thank you. You break all of those. And what's all over your face? Ew. Anyway, so I'm going to go through each excerpt, and I'm going to keep... Yes. What? I'm going to go through each excerpt, and I'm going to stop here and there to expound, and then keep going. Expound, pause, so on and so forth, okay? So, what is an energy signature? So, by definition, in so many words, an energy signature is like your spiritual DNA. And honestly, I would go as far as to say DNA has 2 sides, just like the human body and the human soul, if you will, has 2 sides. You got your soul, and then you got the material manifestation of what the condition of the soul is in. I believe DNA to be the same way. So you got what scientists study, as in the DNA strand that they can tangibly assess and da-da-da-da-da-da. But then you have a spiritual mirror, which I think is actually primary and influences what the more physical manifestation of the DNA contains and how it expresses itself and so on and so forth. This is what I mean. So I feel like spiritual DNA in this regard actually coincides with your actual genetics. They're one and the same, which is leaning into the topic of DNA activation and things of that nature, right? So your energy signature is your spiritual DNA, or the coding. If there's any tech heads in here, or if there's any computer tech coders, programmers, whatever. Some of these analogies will really, tickle your fancy. So it's the coding of your energy signature, your subtle bodies, your toroidal fields, your aura, all that stuff, because they all are different expressions of one big mass of what I will call just a field that encompasses all of the unseen things that represent your expression of consciousness, if you will, right? All of which collectively stores what many refer to as the Akashic records. So in a very vain sense, this is what differentiates family members. Yes, this will be saved, so don't fret. This will be saved. So many people know the Akashic records to be the history of all that is, all that was, and all that will ever be. This is also synonymous to the Book of Life in the Bible. This just carries all of infinite information, if you will. And this information, whether we can access it or not, whether we're conscious of it or not, is stored in our energy signatures, right? And this is how readers and psychics and all that stuff do the kind of work that they do, because they are privy to gifts and proficiencies, spiritually speaking, that allow them to sort through and sift through your energy signature to pull certain information and tell you certain things about yourself, about your life. And their proficiency level depends on, one, their personal karmic disposition, and two, the spiritual wealth that they do or don't have, which is why you have to be careful what kind of work would you do with certain people, but be them spiritual or not, because everything is commerce, right? So in essence, your energy signature contains infinite information on the history of how your consciousness has animated itself and assumed form, right? One. So that is across past lifetimes. I would call them alternate lifetimes because they're kind of all happening at once. That's kind of how you clear karma. Like if something happened in the perceived past and then that theme comes back up and then you clear it and you fix it, it kind of changes the past in a way because time isn't real. So it carries the histories of how your consciousness has animated itself, whether you were a dog, whether you were a cat, whether you were an Asian man, whether you were an African man, whether you were a tree, whether you were a pure life form and didn't have any form. It was still consciousness. A lot of people that, and I'll get into this later, but a lot of people that are more proficient at changing the composition of their energy signatures, they were thought forms a lot longer than they assumed human form, and they have trouble sustaining the density of human form. I'm one of those people. I have a really hard time integrating into the earth realm. To this day, not as bad as it was when I first got here, but you'll find that people with that kind of history and consciousness seem to be more proficient spiritually, because the unseen, if you will, is their stomping grounds, is their home. They're not used to this skin sack, if you will, or the limitations thereof that it keeps them trapped in. So your energy signature has infinite information on the history of how your consciousness has animated itself in assumed form. So all of that information is stored in your energy signatures. So if you come into contact with someone of higher spiritual rank or a higher degree in consciousness, because y'all don't like that rank word, so I'm going to try not to say that, they can perceive who you are in this waking life, on this waking timeline. They can perceive who you've been. And they can perceive things that you might potentially do based on all the different compositions and variations of coding that have high or low or medium potentiality to shift at any given moment. And people that are able to perceive those kinds of things, life is really difficult for them because it's hard for them to see a person as just this waking identity. I have that problem. I lose a lot of friends and associates and family members because I can see all of the timelines and all of the ways in which their consciousness animates itself, and I can't make myself unsee what I'm looking at. You know, you might just be like, I'm just Thomas, I haven't harmed a fly, and I work for a Fortune 5 company, and I can see Thomas on that timeline, that timeline, that time. On that timeline, he was a killer. On that time, he was poor. On that timeline, he was a rapist. On that time, he was this. He may not do any of this stuff on that timeline, but he still carries that karmic imprint or that karmic residue. And for that reason, I might not trust him. Not because he's going to do it or because of any of that stuff, but that still is a part of how I assess the integrity of a person on a spiritual level. Not just what they want me to see or what they want me to focus on. I don't really look at that. I go a little bit beyond that. And that's why I'll start acting weird, because I'm not just looking at you. And a lot of other people of this degree in consciousness, if you will, can attest to that in their own way. So your energy signature also contains or defines, pronounces, whatever, your spiritual rank. So a lot of times when you walk into the presence of a person of high rank, they can collapse your whole paradigm just because now you're in their toroidal field. So if I'm sitting somewhere, or fuck me, if there's a guy sitting somewhere and he's of high rank, when you come into his space and you enter his field, you might start to become uncomfortable. You might get anxiety. You might just, all these things might start being triggered outside of your control. And that's usually because they've done so much clearing and they have access to so much that their presence, without them saying or doing much of anything, can dismantle your entire, I guess, illusory construct, because most of what we engage in the earth realm is ego driven, right? So it's not really anything that holds stake beyond the paradigms that you choose to entertain. So what? They're all gone. All right. Do you want something else? Okay. So then we have what it also, throw it in the garbage. Yeah, it's empty. So throw it in the garbage. No, the garbage in the kitchen. I don't want it in my bedroom garbage. I want it in the kitchen garbage. And then it also carries your karmic debt, of course. So all the karmic debt you carry, all of the karmic debris that you carry, all that stuff is also in your energy signature. So as you can imagine, thank you. As you can imagine, your energy signature carries way more than you might have noticed. And I'm going to lean into that more. Don't get too hung up on understanding the definition, because I think that the examples that I give you guys, Shrew, stop making all that noise. The examples that I give you guys and the analogies that I give you guys and the references that I make will put it into further spiritual context. So just follow along. So to provide a little bit of context, go throw that in the garbage. It's not funny. To provide a little bit of context, psychics, mediums, energy workers, and what many refer to as healers, right? On varying degrees. Like, they don't have to be super proficient. They can be fucking beginners, but they have the gift nonetheless, right? Throw it in the garbage. Why do you just want to come in here and do that? 1 second. Throw it in the garbage. I don't understand why we want to be conscious like that. Please, throw it in there. You want some oranges? You want some crackers? No. You okay? He was literally doing that on purpose. So, to provide a little bit of context, psychics, mediums, energy workers, and what many refer to as healers work very intimately with people's energy signatures. Whether they realize it or not, whether they coin it with that term or not, this is the realm that they work in, right? No, Sharu wants to make me laugh and then make me mad at the same time, and then confuse me because I'm trying to discipline him, but I'm also laughing, and then he starts laughing, and it's a thing that he enjoys. That's what he's doing. So, and if these workers, right, are not in tune with the intricacies of such sacred works, poorly manage their own spiritual checks and balances, or are spiritually unclean themselves, this can be to the client's detriment. So, in my work as a seer, doing eye readings, doing shadow work, and doing all the other things that I've done over the years, when I was a beginner, one, I was not spiritually clean. Two, I did not manage my spiritual checks and balances very well. And three, that put me in a plethora of different karmic crossfires with different individuals, and I did not have enough spiritual wealth to protect me, shield me, help me to avoid that, or even extend them the work, or bridge them to whatever energy signature they needed to pivot into necessary within that work that I wanted to extend to them. So this is a situation for anybody that does work of that caliber, where somebody books you. You have like a $300, $100, $500 service, whatever, right? Somebody books you, they want to get a reading, or they want to get a consultation, or they want to get something, and then something just doesn't connect. And you know you're able to do what you said you can do. You know you're gifted, you get great reviews, but for some reason with this individual, it's not, you know, whatever. And it's confusing at first, especially when you don't understand the nature of how everything is commerce, because they've paid you. They're confused and you're confused. You're confused because you know you're gifted and you know that you've done this many times. Why isn't it working with this person? And they're confused because they paid their hard-earned fucking money. What's good? Like, I've seen all these reviews. Why am I not experiencing what all these other people are experiencing? And that is because all these other people that have experienced the more positive, profound things, they have a different karmic disposition, and they have a different amount of allotted spiritual wealth, allowing them to receive whatever they want to receive. And in turn, you don't have to extend that much of your own spiritual wealth to them so that they can experience that. With the other people, even if you try to, sometimes you can't spiritually, as the practitioner, not even as the client, as the practitioner, sometimes you can't even spiritually afford to do a service for that person. And so if you persist, or if you don't just give them their energy back, essentially, right? Because it's not an equal exchange, it's not reciprocal, somebody's going to feel robbed at the end of the day. If you don't do that, you end up putting yourself in somewhat of a karmic crossfire with them, which can animate in a variety of ways, both material and non-material. And I won't get into how that can look. I might get into it later on down here somewhere. But yes, we all work mediums, seers, spiritualists, channelers, conjurers, hoodoo practitioners. We're working a lot with energy signatures. What this essay is going to highlight and break down is what we're doing exactly with energy signatures in these different realms of, I don't want to call it consciousness, but in these different practices or reality constructs or whatever. I'm going to show you the significance of energy signatures in different expressions that, you know, people might call one thing, but it all boils down to the same thing. So in this essay, like I said, we will explore the intricacies of how grossly normalized the phenomena that interfaces with our energy signatures affect the overall composition of our energy signatures, so we can bring more awareness to that which influences our karmic disposition. So I feel like a lot of what we go out and do, listening to music, going to parties, watching movies, watching news stations, sitting in a cipher and smoking with a bunch of people, having sex with people, giving birth, we have no clue what the condition of our energy signature is, what role it's playing in the way that whole thing assumes form and materializes, or what that means or how that affects our karmic disposition. We have no clue. We're just kind of doing it. Now, we might have certain sensitivities. We might have it felt weird. I don't know how that felt. I didn't like that. She was acting weird. She started projecting on me. We might keep it at that level to at least acknowledge the dissonance that we feel. But we're not really, I'm not finding anybody that's leaning into the foundation of what's actually happening, which is what I want to kind of shed light on in this essay. So this can bring all overall awareness of our what influences our karmic disposition, the DNA that remains dormant or activates, because activating or really just activating DNA or it remaining dormant highly depends on your energy signature as well, and the role that our breath and our nervous system plays in it all, which kind of leans into the whole karmic clearing topic that I keep beating in the head just to get through to people, because it just needs to be spoken about. Because I'm personally, over the years, I've grown tired of hearing people chanting and complaining and protesting and all these outcries and stuff, just because of the ignorance on topics like this. And it's not even so much that they're doing it on purpose. And it's not even so much that everybody's like that. It's just that the people that are like that have gotten more attention and reinforcement than those that are actually leaning into the things that are foundational and more of the origin of what we're experiencing here, right? So we're going to start with baseline energy signature. So this is where we start to kind of get into the things, right? So your baseline energy signature, that is your primary understanding of who you are. That is your baseline. This is me. Like when you can feel somebody's spirit or somebody's presence, usually what you're feeling into is their baseline energy signature, right? That's typically something that is like, okay, you can use that to recognize them, to feel into them, to connect to them. You're sourcing or streamlining your energy or attention to their baseline energy signature. And you can always access that so long as it remains in that composition that you're used to, right? And this is why the importance of being able to change it is so huge, because, y'all don't even understand. It's about to get good. Anyway, so your baseline energy signature, depending on your degree in consciousness or your spiritual rank, I'm trying not to use that word, but whatever, usually influences the nature by which you perceive this waking timeline to be unfolding. Its coding, right? Its coding dictates your perspectives, your mentality, your limits, as well as your spiritual capabilities and capacities. So your baseline energy signature can dictate how your whole waking lifetime goes and how far beyond that or within that you'll go. You can remain just a constant, this is me, I ain't changing, I'm gonna stay the same forever. Your baseline energy signature doesn't change very much, with very little fluctuations that don't really change the overall composition. What? Oh, yeah. Pull your pants down. Right? So, we're going to get into two different types of incarnates, right? And by incarnates, I mean consciousness that has assumed human form, for lack of a better term, okay? And this will give you some perspective on baseline energy signatures and what I mean by that. So, for starters, there are some people that change very minimally. Y'all are going to be familiar with this because these are the people that pretty much, pull your pants up. These are the people that pretty much make us feel isolated on our spiritual journeys, that make us feel like we're crazy, that make us feel like whatever. Yes, simply because most people that incarnate here, for the most part, or at least that's how the propaganda and the news and the media and the whatever perpetuates it to be. I don't think we should lean on that at all. But based on these outlets where we have these statistics that aren't really leaning into all of the other multiplicity of timelines that exist. They're only sticking to one, and they're only recording that density. They're not accounting for all these other things. So wouldn't recommend you to lean on that for any kind of data, really. You should lean on yourself, because your energy signature is going to make you privy to all the other information outside of the density of the paradigm that the statistical data was recorded within, right? So there are some people that change very minimally, don't change much, and remain just about the same throughout their waking life. You may find that these individuals are closed-minded, dense-minded, resistant to change, aren't very connected to the unseen, or are severely programmed. I personally like to say that in terms of soul age, these types of people are newbies and are still earning their stripes as far as the vastness of how their consciousness has managed to assume form and animate itself. Some may even refer to these kinds of people as empty seaters or backfill people. So their consciousness doesn't have a thick enough resume, or doesn't have enough historical meat, if you will, in terms of how it's expressed and animated itself across time and across the multiverse. It doesn't have enough of that to actually hold any weight of any significance. You might even call them agents. They have many names. We're often, those of us that are aware, NPCs is another name for them. Y'all on it. These people are just filling up space. If you've seen The Matrix, these are just all the random numbers that are just walking around, right? Their baseline energy signature is just non-playable characters. That's another word, NPCs, right? It's the same. It doesn't change much. They can get hijacked, which we might get into later. I don't think I covered that. They can get hijacked and it can be changed temporarily just because they have no awareness to control and harness the composition of their energy signature just for some other person's or other thought forms desires to be seen through to completion. But typically it's just the same. I think they refer to it as ones and zeros even or something, but I'm not a mathematician, so I'm not even going to go into that reference. But I remember people speaking about it in that way. So these types of people's baseline energy signatures change very minimally, right? Very minimally unless, like I said, like in the Matrix, how he can take over one of those empty seaters and become them and then use them to do something and then drop them and they go back to their basic programming. Their baseline energy signature is just probably a regular coding that's linked to some bigger system that they have no control or power over, really, until they start to go through experiences and expand their portfolio and consciousness, if you will, to start imprinting and influencing that of their own energy signature to the point where they're not just empty seaters, right? Which takes lifetimes and varieties of different expressions in consciousness across the time-space continuum, but we're just going to focus on where they're at right now. So these people baseline energy signatures change very minimally, making them easy to control and manipulate. So essentially, these are the masses that we talk about. The masses within artificial timelines and denser paradigms, but not the masses in the sense of the multiverse, not the masses in the sense of all timelines that exist across fucking infinity and beyond. We're talking about one very dense construct. That's the masses. And in contrast with the actual vastness of existence and consciousness, they're not actually the masses. They're the masses within the earth realm density construct that we all know and hate, right? So these people are easy to control and manipulate, resulting in all around predictable behavior. So this is why they're used for mass rituals. This is why they're used for summoning a big massive energy for the artificial persons to utilize, because they don't have regenerative life force energy. So they have to take it from summoning something in someone's history and consciousness. Maybe it'd be a past lifetime, a feeling that they felt, or an experience that they had that made them feel triggered, and then they put it on the news and it triggers them, and then all this other stuff. They can manipulate and confuse and fuck with them all they want until certain karmas are cleared, or until like they expand their consciousness resume, right? So not being able to, or not being open to changing your energy signature can tether you to very dense reality constructs that stifle your spiritual capacity in ways that limit you to imprints, karmic imprints, that serve to reinforce your own perpetual karmic narratives, right? So when you expand in consciousness, when you awaken, when you activate gifts, when you activate dormant DNA, when you remember who you were, when you remember why you fucking reincarnated and all those things, you can't do that until your baseline energy signature changes. So anytime those more profound things take place, your baseline energy signature has shifted and pivoted significantly, which is the product of a level of karmic clearing, be it at will or spontaneously, or a little combination of both, right? But if that's happening very minimally or not at all you're going to know is that dense reality, because you're not going to have the coding variations to be able to experiencing anything higher, vaster, lighter, more advanced. That takes a more advanced coding to be able to experience realities that are of that caliber. You can't just have that one baseline energy signature and then think you about to come on my live and listen to me talk about energy signatures and understand what the fuck I'm talking about. And this is where platforms like Instagram violate the laws of vibration, because your baseline energy signature, if you take away the platforms and things that violate the law of vibration in ways, right? A lot of people that be on my page or your page or their page, they get to look at and play with and assess and critique and whatever the fuck they want to do, information that they actually can't spiritually afford to comprehend. And that is heavily contingent on whatever their baseline energy signature is, as well as their ability to allow it to even shift temporarily, let alone for prolonged periods of time or even very rapidly, right? So they're stuck in these more dense realities, and then, you know, they might be able to hop on a live of someone who does not or who is not trapped in denser realities, but that does not mean that they can comprehend or afford the information being spoken about, right? So, such a fixed nature also results in more karmic indebtedness and all around spiritual uncleanliness. And this is kind of leaning toward what I usually say when I speak about karmic clearing, when I say that when you're on an artificial timeline with minimal nature, minimal elemental value, its organic ecosystem, it has been compromised. There's very minimal spiritual cleanliness. There's very minimal breath, spirit, aliveness, life, very minimal things of that nature, because things that are fixed are not natural. The natural world is always changing, always flowing, always shifting and changing in form. So anything that becomes fixed in nature, you can almost always assume that there is some karmic depth, some kind of spiritual uncleanliness, some severely mismanaged spiritual checks and balances that are keeping those individuals in that karmic loop, right? So I found that it usually takes these types of people years in linear time, or even lifetimes, to transform their baseline energy signature in a way that reflects an apparent enough shift in the quality of their existence. So there's some of us that it'll take us 50 years before we start to experience basic human compassion. It'll take us 70 years before we open up our minds just a little bit to accept that men fuck men. You know, it takes some people a very, 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 very long time to adapt. And these are just dense concepts. This can go way above and beyond shit like that. But I'm just saying, some people, it takes them lifetimes or even their whole waking life to shift their baseline energy signature, and some don't. Some have the same damn near baseline energy signature. It might rift and fluctuate very slightly. They might reject it and snap back into the baseline energy signature, which has a lot to do with how they deal with karmic clearing and things. And they change forms, they reincarnate, and they do it again and again and again and again and again until some phenomena takes place, whether at will or spontaneously, that allows them to actually pivot into a different kind of energy signature that would grant them a more vast, spiritually fulfilling experience, if you will, for severe lack of a better term, because not every form of consciousness goal is fulfillment. We just like to think that. Some of consciousness just wants to express itself, but humans, we like to romanticize everything. So fulfillment, right? Now, oftentimes they may even create the illusion. This is where we get into illusion magic a little bit, because a lot of y'all have suffered, I mean, myself even too, but just not in a very long time, have suffered from illusion magic. And illusion magic is the difference between an alchemist and a magician, right? A magician works with illusion magic. An alchemist is actually changing energy signatures and mutating things on site. He's not playing with your mind or playing with your vulnerabilities or your susceptibilities or your deficiencies, essentially, right? So oftentimes people that don't have a baseline energy signature that changes very much, they create illusions that their baseline energy signature is changing in composition, right? So let's look at the artificial world for a second. Sure, let's all take a deep breath because I'm talking real fast. Okay. They create the illusion that their baseline energy signatures are changing in composition. And you might recognize some of these things. Now, before I get into the different ways in which that may look, on artificial timelines, let's be clear. Let's take away all biases and let's just look at it for what it is. On artificial timelines, and with the beings that are primarily bound to artificial timelines and paradigms and all the density that it entails, that's how they get by. They're mimicking the gifts and the rankings and the degrees in consciousness of children of God, as we call it, right? They're mimicking that in their own dense, limited reality so that they can survive and get by. These same beings live off of privileges. They don't live off of spiritual birthrights. They don't have any. So they need privileges. They need fiat. They need material things. They need all these things that can alter and create illusions around their actual spiritual karmic disposition, right? And if you're programmed still, or if you haven't made the necessary shifts to your baseline energy signature, you might fall for a little bit of illusion magic because you simply didn't have the spiritual wealth to protect you or to grant you the discernment to shield you from that. And the experience in and of itself might grant that to you, right? If you see it through the completion, that is. So different types of illusion magic could be what many coin, or the term that many coin, code switching. This can be material wealth. This can be carefully constructed facades or self-image. This can be wearing certain types of cologne and perfume. This can be wearing makeup, okay? This is only really, oh, that's the next sentence, so let me just read that. Which typically only bamboozles the spiritually dead that primarily inhabit the artificial world and all associated density. But it would not fool the group that I'm about to describe next. So, boom, you got a person, they have no spiritual birthrights. I'm just going to keep it as extreme as I can just to convey the principle of what I'm saying. So you have a person that has no spiritual birthrights. You have a person that has no spiritual wealth, that is actually quite spiritually bankrupt, disconnected from any kind of otherworldly senses. So they're limited to their five senses. All that they have to themselves is what they can conjure inside of you based on their appearance, not the quality of their spirits or souls, but the emotions and the feelings that they can conjure by the way that they put makeup on and the way that they smell and the way that they dress. This is all illusion magic, right? And every day, we all, in our own regards, fall for it until we fully just get a hold of our shit and we're like, bullshit, I call bullshit, right? You even see these in religious sects, in organizations where they wear certain headdresses and holy garments and stuff that does not really speak for their energy signatures or the associated spiritual wealth or bankruptcy thereof. But it cloaks it in a way to where you're distracted enough and to where you will, how do I say this? The way that you perceive them will manipulate your mind into thinking that their energy signature is something that it is not. So when, for instance, when you see somebody that's materialistically wealthy, you might look at them and associate them with wealth, but that's not spiritual wealth. When you see someone that smells good and you smell them, oh my God, you might get turned on. When if you smelt their natural or picked up on their natural pheromones, you might be completely disgusted and off-put, right? When there's somebody that's speaking a certain way or carrying themselves a certain way, they're giving you the illusion that they're shapeshifters, code switchers, but they're not really real shapeshifters. They're playing with your five senses. Nothing beyond that. They're only fucking with your five senses. And from there, you can even take how they fuck with your five senses and you can bring it to a deeper level, tap into your own magic, and then take that to a whole nother level that they didn't really conjure or make you do. Like, they don't make you sit there and take their material wealth and mistake it for spiritual wealth. That's something that you do. You give them that power. But they actually never really had any power. They just conjured it from you based on inspiring you to be attracted to them, to admire them, to be jealous of them. They're conjuring things out of you, but that doesn't mean that those things are actually real. Yes. Go wash your face.
No.
Why?
I love cookies.
No, go put on your face. Right. So, even crystals. Crystals help you to get yourself acquainted with the process of changing your energy signature, but crystals don't change your energy signature. They're crutches for helping you to understand that process. So let's say you have a real stone, now this fake plastic shits that some of y'all be wearing, but let's say you have a real stone that you hold it and it gives you, it has some kind of mineral content that inspires certain things inside of you to feel protected, abundant, all these components that you don't have. The stone has it, but you don't have it. So when you carry it, it enters your toroidal field, right? And it's kind of like providing you with an extended field. It's not yours. You're not generating it. You haven't even done the work to generate or sustain that shit. But it's getting you acquainted with what that feels like. So now when the stone loses itself, as stones are known to do, when they vanish, when you lose them, when they just disappear, usually it's because your energy, you've been doing some caliber of work or enough karmic clearing to be able to actually be in that energy signature. Thank you. To be in that energy signature, sustain it, and not have it collapse in the absence of the crystal or the pendulum or the sage or whatever. So a lot of these spiritual tools, they have their own consciousness, and because of that, they can cause alchemical shifts that are temporary, but they're not long-term, and they don't take away the absolute necessity of doing the work, right? So, now, contrary to what's been described before, there are those of us that somehow manage to live multiple lifetimes within what we perceive to be one waking life. So, there are some of you that you've been a musician, you've been a stripper, you've been a drug dealer, you've been a Christian, you've been like you have experienced and shifted your baseline energy signature so many times within one lifetime that it literally feels like you lived 20 different lives in one lifetime and you're only fucking 30, right? Whereas these other people that I was describing, they wouldn't really be able to do that. These kinds of people would just be like, I am Jim, I am from Oklahoma, I have a PhD, and I am a lover of Jesus. And that nigga is that until the day that he crosses over and assumes another form, because his baseline energy signature does not change much. But for those of us that have these different proficiencies and things, ours change very rapidly within one lifetime, which kind of dissolves the whole concept of time anyway, if you really pay attention to it. But yeah, right? So these types of people that I'm now describing tend to be more fluid, more open-minded, more unconventional. They're always challenging norms. They're always rebelling, etc. Because of this proficiency that they have with changing their baseline energy signature, they are privy to seeing different paradigms and reality constructs and all these other things to where they're like, nah, we ain't about to sit here and act like this is the only shit. There's that, there's that, there's that, there's that, there's that, there's that. And they may even go through a phase where they're not content with the reality that not everybody's baseline energy signature changes within a waking life, right? So yes, and this is why many of you guys as parents stay the same, family members stay the same. You got to leave old friends behind. You outgrow people. Their baseline energy signature ain't changing. There's motherfuckers that you went to high school with. You go back to your hometown. They're the same. They just aged in their vessel a little bit, but their baseline energy signature is exactly the same. Maybe with a few fluctuations, but not enough to change the overall collective composition of the signature, right? So such openness reflects a level of spiritual liberation, if you will, that allows their baseline energy signature to not only be more susceptible to changing in composition, spontaneously or at will, because it's not always at will. Sometimes it starts off spontaneously until you get enough of a handle on it to do it at will, which is what I'll be describing here. But may even grant them powers and gifts that give them the ability to change the energy composition of other people's signatures. So, FYI, when you watch me or anybody that inspires you, be it through spoken word, be it through these kinds of talks, be it through music, be it through any kind of creative works, right? The moment that you get inspired, the moment that you get chills, the moment that you get some kind of bodily something, the moment that it inspires you to do something that you were not going to do, that does not reflect the trajectory of where you were coming from prior to that inspiration, that person has essentially mutated your DNA on sight. And in doing that, they have changed your baseline energy signature. Now, whether or not that's sustained depends on a bunch of different circumstances: your spiritual rank, your spiritual wealth, your karmic disposition, your willingness to see a karmic clearing cycle through to completion, so on and so forth, right? Identity crises also change into the baseline energy signature shifting. And these are usually extremely gifted people, but they don't get to see that because they have a lot of karmic cords in artificial timelines, and that yanks them back into that baseline energy signature. And then they cycle and cycle and cycle until, you know, they have enough spiritual wealth to see the karmic clearing process through without, you know, being bent back into the mold of whatever that artificial paradigm required them to. So, where was I? So, those that are proficient at changing their energy signatures in this way, I'm one of those people. So when you listen to me talk and you're like, yo, Nicole, you just activated this, and oh my God, I got chills. I just changed your energy signature. Temporarily. It's your job to sustain that or keep building upon that or whatever, and you can very easily snap back into your old baseline energy signature. But for that moment, the signature composition changed, and your nervous system usually tells you when your energy signature is changing, is trying to change, or has changed. And that's why paying attention to nervous system cues is so important in the process of karmic clearing, as I've disclosed in the past, right? So this is mutating DNA, because remember, I'm telling you guys, your energy signature is your spiritual DNA, if you will. And this is like mutation, essentially. When you mutate something, or when something mutates, its coding, its foundational coding is essentially changing. In our case, like I said, it can be prolonged and seemingly fixed, or it can be temporary. So these individuals that are able to do this rank that they have, this spiritual rank, or this degree in consciousness, if you will, grants them access to a higher caliber of information, right? On all dimensions, on all planes across the multiverse, on a variety of different timelines, whether they can put it into words or not, right? If you're more feminine, you're not going to really be able to put it into words. You'll probably just feel it and be extremely advanced, but not be able to have the skills to bring it into material reality yet. And the more that you travel across the multiverse and timeline jump and all that stuff, you literally, like, when you go to different timelines, or when you think you're in a dream realm, but you're actually in a whole nother multiverse, in a whole nother dimension, on a whole nother timeline, you got to learn the difference between the two. You can download new coding in those realms, in those dimensions, bring it back to this waking life, and that can give you a level of proficiency to be able to navigate your reality and comprehend things in a way that you otherwise wouldn't have felt like, or wouldn't have been able to, right? So this rank, like I said, being able to change your energy signature so drastically in things, gives you access to a higher caliber of information, one, and a broader range of what you can experience within the earth realm. So when you are advanced in this way, you can experience extraterrestrials, you can experience dimensional travel, you can get abducted, you can get hijacked and have extraterrestrials speak to you and channel through you. Some people call it forms of possession. You can channel the dead, because to do all of those absurd, profound things, your energy signature has to be able to change. It has to be able to change. It has to be able to, it has to be able to do that. Otherwise, those beings, those thought forms, those codes, they're not going to have a broad enough channel to flow through and express themselves through your vessel. And a lot of people, like the people that I described above that were more synonymous to empty seaters and things, their channels are very, very narrow. So ain't nobody's ancestor, or ain't nobody's extraterrestrial, ain't nobody's fifth dimensional, sixth dimensional, whatever y'all call it, level of coding about to flow through their vessel, because it's simply not, it's going to be resistant to it, right? But for those of us that are more flexible, we get to experience these otherworldly things, these expansions in consciousness, these other realms, these other beings, these other codes, these other things. And depending on our level of intellect, if you will, we'll be able to transcribe it and bring it down to third dimension, hop on the live and share it with others, right? And what allows you to comprehend it is your proficiency level with your energy signature, not your intellect. So a lot of y'all over there like this, you're not comprehending anything. That's not going to help you comprehend it. That's going to help you to be able to reiterate it, maybe try to logically connect the dots, but there are going to be so many so many holes in your understanding, because your baseline energy signature has to be compatible with whatever I'm talking about. You have to be able to have that different variety and combinations of different advanced codings to be able to comprehend what I'm saying. And people with more fixed baseline energy signatures don't have that. So they can't afford this information or information of this caliber. So, now, this gives them access to a variety of coding variations, right? So those of you guys that can comprehend the things that I'm saying, or the things that other beings in higher degrees of consciousness are saying, you have a variety of different coding variations that you're working with, and they're probably changing very rapidly, or just enough for you to not be fixed, if you will, right? And the more karma that you clear, the more that arrangement can shift, pivot, alchemize, and so on and so forth. This gives them access to a variety of coding variations that allows them to comprehend the intricacies of otherworldly phenomena and process their experiences a lot quicker and a lot deeper than most, because they are not confined to the limitations of time, which, might I add, serves as the thread that binds us to karma in the first place. Time and karma are intimately connected, if you haven't pieced that together by now, right? So essentially, they clear karma and ascend in consciousness at accelerated rates. And this is why they're able to live 20, 30, 40 different lifetimes in one perceived waking life, right? This is why they're able to timeline jump. This is why they're able to channel different thought forms and beings and entities and information from a higher degree in consciousness, and densify it enough to be able to put it into human language for somebody to halfway comprehend, and fuck around and mutate their DNA and change their energy signature on sight upon just listening to it and being inspired. And when they're inspired, it changes your breath, and then your breath changes your energy signature composition. And your breath also clears karma. Those processes are kind of synonymous in a way. So that's that. Now we're going to get into the science of cord cutting. I'm going to take a break, take a breath. And I want you guys to be writing down questions, because like I said, one, I'm not going to be answering any here. And two, as these things come up organically, especially if it gives you a nervous system cue or it gives you chills, you should definitely explore whatever triggered that in the form of a question or whatever form you like. So make sure you guys are writing down your questions for tomorrow's Zoom. Now, the science of cord cutting. So many of you guys know cord cutting to be this witchy thing where it's like, I have an ex-boyfriend, he broke my heart, and I'm so attached to him, I can't get over him, I'm going to go to a witch to cut the cord. No. If anything, that witch, being that she might not have that much spiritual wealth, even though she has certain proficiencies, that doesn't mean she has enough spiritual wealth to change your baseline energy signature. She'll change it temporarily by manipulating the elements that she's working with and things, but she can't change your baseline energy signature. You would have to do that karmic work to actually change it. So in that sense, it's a scam if you're looking for any kind of permanence. And also oftentimes witches and things that try to perpetuate that they do cord cuttings and rituals, they don't know the intricacies of these kinds of sciences, if you will, to be able to explain the shit to you. Because if they explain what they were actually doing and the often temporary nature of it, unless you take the initiative and you have the incentive to do follow-up work, right? You're not going to know that it's a completely temporary ritual, and that you have to see it through the completion in your own way if you want it to stick, so to speak. And a lot of work with witches and things like that, they don't have, they're kind of con artists in the sense that they don't have those proficiency levels, and the people that book them, they don't have the spiritual wealth to even discern that. So it's kind of like they're mirroring each other in a way, so you can't be mad at either party. having a karmic mirroring experience, if you will. And they have to, because they're both going to learn things, either the witch through the pain of the karmic interference, or the client through feeling scammed, feeling robbed, seeing nothing change, and so on and so forth. So when we manage to completely change the composition of our baseline energy signature, right? So when we can actually see that process through to completion, right? We've had a prolonged energy signature for a prolonged period of time. When we actually manage to completely change it, not temporarily through little spell work and stones and borrowing prana from plants and sticks and bones and shit. When we actually change it through and through, right? Which typically happens when we bring a karmic cycle to a complete close and the karma is actually cleared. We are no longer susceptible to being energetically tracked by characters from old karmic cycles. Now, all of y'all with ex-boyfriends and abusive friends and toxic family members and crazy exes, this is the part that I'm going to need y'all to pay attention to. And if you got friends that are going through that, send them this shit, because this is where I'm going to cover that. This is the actual true definition and foundation of letting go. And a lot of us only know how to let go as per artificial timeline, artificial construct, artificial life standards. This is, I'm going to cut my hair off. New year, new me. I'm going to move to a new state. I'm going to quit my job and get a new job. I'm going to change my nail color. You're working with illusion magic, be it for your damn self or somebody else. You're not alchemizing or changing anything. And that shit works within the artificial timeline. And then you have another artificial bitch that'll be like, oh my God, Cynthia, this new you, I'm loving it. But you haven't changed, because after all of that fluff dies off, you go home and you sit with yourself, and the thick, murky karmic residue that you have not cleared is still going to be right there with you. So that's what I mean by that. So even down to cutting people off and cutting cords, whether you do it through spell work or these temporary, I'm going to block him, I'm going to do this. Even if you do that, you have to couple it with the spiritual work. You can do both. You can do the spiritual work and you can also block them. And they can be a hand-in-hand thing, a little powwow combo. But you can't just do one, right? If you form the karmic cord on an artificial timeline, but then you also have the spiritual karma, you have to tackle it in both realms. That's duality, okay? So many of us are actually more so used to doing it on the artificial, in the artificial realms. Like, I'm going to block him, I'm going to change my number, I'm going to cut him off, I'm going to change my hair color, I'm going to change my name, all temporary. You're going to snap right back into that same cycle, that same baseline energy signature. You're going to animate the same characters in different avatars, right? Which leans more into my shadow work workbook, those avatars that assume form to mirror your karmic debris back onto you, right? Until you make that alchemical change, you can be tracked. And leaning into that a little bit more, a direct indicator that there is still a karmic cord present, right, is when these characters, these avatars from old karmic cycles, right, which you want to be your old life, but isn't actually your old life because you're still in the old energy signature. So you're still in that cycle. That's still your life, even if you've given off the illusion of otherwise, right? So these abusers, these toxic friends, these crazy exes, these abusive friends, these toxic family members, whatever these characters or avatars are that speak to the karmic cycle that you're trying to exit or bring to a close, or that you don't want to experience anymore, right? These characters can still, so long as you remain in that energy signature. Okay, look at it like this. This is the old energy signature. Then there's a cord. And this is the avatar or the character from that story. So long as this shit stays orange and this shit doesn't even change form and it stays like this, that cord ain't going nowhere. That cord is not going anywhere. So much so that you might drop that avatar character that you knew as Tom, but Will gonna come back and have a damn near identical energy signature as the nigga that you blocked, that you thought you was getting rid of because you blocked him or because he moved on or because of whatever. Your your baseline energy signature and all associated karma is going to, that cord can be linked to anything. It doesn't have to be that person. It can be a person that mimics the same damn, if not almost identical energy signature as the last person. So just like you have your parents, your mother was like this way, you're going to form a shit ton of cords until you can associate it with your mother, sure. But you're going to attract friends, lovers, bosses that are going to animate the same karmic debris stemming from the cord from your mother in a variety of different forms. And the signature of this baseline energy signature right here has to change, or those cords are going to keep animating and assuming form and manifesting in whatever way the fuck that they want to. You can think you can block Tom, I'm gonna block Lucy, I'm gonna block her, I cut everybody off because new year, new me. Cord's still there, baby, because that energy signature hasn't changed. You haven't seen that karmic cycle through to completion. So because of that, let's say we're going to stick to the one character, the initial character. We're not going to get into the intricacies of how another character can pop up with an identical energy signature to whatever. We're going to say that this is your abusive ex, Tom. Okay? Tom, until you change your baseline energy signature through clearing that karma or what have you, Tom can infiltrate, conjure, and summon you psychologically or emotionally. And it's not him. It's the karmic theme. You can be conjured through Tom or another manifestation thereof. But you will always be infiltrated, conjured, and summoned psychologically or emotionally, which will cause you to do things like speak the person up. You'll uncontrollably vent, uncontrollably dump in a way that's hard to control. Like you can't, like you're damn near possessed by venting. Like you think about the person and you just go on a tangent and your friend is like, but anyway, girl, yeah, fuck that nigga. Anyway, yeah, cord is still there, right? Or you'll be easily emotionally triggered, right? It don't even have to be, you can cut your mother off completely. You can meet a woman that has a similar energy signature to your mother and you will still be triggered and you'll behave like a child with this stranger that just reminds you subconsciously of your mother's energy signature, but you're probably not consciously making the connection because never cleared the karma, never changed the energy signature, cord is still there. Doesn't matter the form that it animates into or expresses itself into, right? So essentially, unpaid karma or an obstructed karmic clearing process. And by obstructed, this goes into the formula that I use in the fulfillment code. So in the fulfillment code, I have a formula that I reference that highlights karmic clearing as a process, just to give you kind of a sense of linearity to it. So first, you're in like a karmic loop. I'm not answering any questions in this live. You have to go to tomorrow's question and answer. If you're late, I understand, but we're not answering questions in this live. This is just the discussion. If you have questions, tomorrow's question and answer is where you go. You send $20 to the Cash App, the Zelle, or the PayPal, and you can attend, and I'll send you the Zoom link info. It's tomorrow at the same time as today's, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, because I don't want to be thrown off topic because this is a meaty essay if you haven't read it, okay? So when you obstruct the karmic clearing process, this is how to go. So you'll be in karmic limbo or in a karmic loop. Usually it's you have a lot of your eggs in the artificial timeline basket, so to speak. So you're just looping around, pain, cycles, suffering, lack, abuse, whatever the theme might entail, right? And then you go down and you're prompted to be initiated. Once you're prompted to be initiated into a higher degree in consciousness, essentially, right? And that doesn't mean ascended master, healer, spiritualist. It's just a higher degree in consciousness than where you were before. So it's more about the contrast of where you were before. It's not to say, oh, you've elevated and now you're a light worker. No, a higher degree in consciousness than where you were before, meaning working with more prana, acquiring more spiritual wealth, reclaiming more birthrights, whatever that may look like for your unique path or journey, right? So you're initiated to ascend into that higher degree, right? And then once you're initiated, you're prompted to make a sacrifice, or a sacrifice makes itself. It can be at will, quit your job, spontaneous, get fired. At will, you have a baby, give birth, lose a lot of blood, spontaneously, get in a car accident, lose a lot of blood. Whatever form of sacrifice, take a psychedelic, have a bad trip, Or have a manic episode, lose your mind, run down the street butt naked, and get thrown into a mental home. Or not, whichever, whatever. A sacrifice has to be made, meaning a large sum of life force, be it in the form of blood or just pure life force energy, has to be released to clear up that space, right? Now, once you make that sacrifice, what then happens is you're prompted to let your old self die. That old baseline energy signature has to disintegrate. And this is when things like manic episodes, identity crises, if a person is resisting, it can be seen as schizophrenia. If a person wants both energy signatures, they'll be bipolar. If a person wants, like, the ways in which this process can fragment itself is literally the epitome and the foundation of what they term mental illness. It's the fragmentation of a baseline energy signature trying to shift, and due to resistance or not enough spiritual wealth being present, or not being willing to make a certain sacrifice, it's fragmented, and now you have a schizoid kind of complex going on, right? And it is a form of an ego death, but I find that the term ego death usually makes us feel like our inflated ego, like this part of us has to die. And the ego is literally like, my name is Nicole. That's my ego. I speak English. That's an ego. I'm from New York. That's an ego. I'm a human. That's an ego. Like, because you're just pure consciousness. So it doesn't really mean that you're what we usually chalk up to ego is not really ego, right? So when you so then you're prompted to die. So the baseline energy signature is trying to change, and then if you allow it to successfully change, so there's 3 parts to this process. This is part 3. So I'm trying to find all these things to use. So you have old self has to die, right? This baseline energy signature wants to transform completely, right? Then you have over here on the other end of the spectrum, new version of self is reborn. This is the new energy signature composition when seen through to completion. Everything in between that, guess what that is? Shadow work. Okay? And usually when we die, when that old energy signature changes, it triggers the true essence of shadow work. Now, if you want to understand that, get my newest ebook, Introduction to Understanding Life as a Shadow Worker, because shadow work is not journal prompts. Shadow work is not these trivial ass exercises that these people are selling to you guys. Shadow work is a mind, body, spirit, physiological fucking process that can even go a bit beyond that of the inner child. We call it the inner child because that's where we associate the traumas with on a more surface level. But it's more so that when we're children, a lot of our history and consciousness is still intact. And so when we start to repress those memories and those proficiencies, that's why it's associated with the inner child. But it's a bit beyond the inner child even. It's just shadow. Shadow is just tucked away, not seen, repressed, suppressed. It's only the inner child because that's the last time we remember or recollect these proficiencies being at the forefront of our personality before all the artificial layers and programs and all that other shit, right? So now old self dies, baseline energy signature starts changing in composition completely. Shadow work ensues. If you can get through the underworld. So look, from here, baseline energy signature changes. It's going to thrust you. You're going to go through some kind of ego death, identity crisis, whatever extreme. It could be subtle. It could be extreme, whatever. You're going to go down into the underworld. That's where shadow work takes place, in case you didn't know. You might feel suicidal. You're going to feel the thought forms, the entities, the spirits, all of those things that have been created while you suppressed all that shit. You got to go quarrel and talk amongst them niggas. And you need to find a middle ground with them. Because that's the only way that you're going to be reborn. Same thing happens in birth. You have to go to the underworld and deal with all your shit before baby can come earthside, right? Some people get trapped in the underworld. These are the people like, yeah, something happened. Their old self died. And they were never the same. They've just been crazy ever since. Oh, got stuck in the underworld. They couldn't see that through to completion, right? Some people can be like, oh, whoa, no. As soon as they feel the shadow work coming, I'm gonna go back and loop up to where it's comfortable. I don't want to experience none of this. And so they kind of go back. Right. They loop back up and they go back to karmic limbo because that's comfortable, that's familiar. Even though it's a crippling, stifling, limiting energy signature that doesn't grant them shit, right? They'd rather maybe go through climbing the corporate ladder because they don't have to feel anything when they do that. They don't have to do any real work. They just have to dress the part, look the part, speak the part, and engage in a bunch of fucking illusion magic to get to some perceived place. And even then, the inner fulfillment isn't there, so they're still void. So some people opt for that. Now, if they don't opt for that, and let's say they go to the underworld, they tangle with their demons a little bit, exercise them a little bit, whether that be animating it through their vessel or purely on a psychological and emotional plane. You have a choice depending on how much spiritual wealth you have. Most people that don't have enough spiritual wealth, they have to animate it through some chaotic, actual physical experience, like running down the street butt naked. But if you have a little bit more prana, and if you have a little bit more allotted spiritual wealth while you're going through that aspect of the process, you can do it on a purely emotional and psychological plane, sitting in this one spot and not moving a muscle. Don't believe me? Go to an ayahuasca ceremony. Do plant medicine. Do any of those things. And you'll see a person, or you'll hear of accounts of people, or even your damn self, have gone through all of these karmic clearings, and you just were sitting there. Like you were in bed. You were at home. You were in the garden. You were in the grass. You were under a tree. You didn't have to go and do all the physical things. Right? So once you get through that and you make it out of the underworld, which my ebook talks about in great detail, and the underworld is you got to be strategic with the underworld. You can't just, I don't know, go down there and, I mean, some people say fuck it and make a home out of it, and they're like, I was born in the darkness, you merely adopted to it, and they just stay there because it's easier, because they're actually stuck. But once you make it out of there and you get into the rebirth, now you have a new baseline energy signature, right? Now this karmic clearing process happens very rapidly and constantly for some people, and kind of like once in a blue moon for others. For those of us that are more advanced, it happens quite often, quite consistently, and we usually can clear karma a lot quicker than the average person. The average person, the empty seaters, the ones that baseline energy signature rarely change, and if it does, very little, takes them lifetimes, takes them years before they can get to that point. Sorry. Then, right, wait, where was I? Where was I? Yes. Yeah. Okay, so what I meant by obstructed karmic clearing process is when you can't see it through to completion. So the underworld scares the shit out of you, you go back from whence you came. Or you loop between prompted to make a sacrifice and death. Sacrifice and death. Some people create a loop out of that. They're not even in the artificial timeline loop. They're in a loop between making a sacrifice and dying. And they just keep looping through that until they can grow enough courage to go to the underworld. And some people loop between the underworld and the rebirth of themselves for a little bit. Like, you can kind of get stuck in a karmic loop at whatever phase, really. And then after that, you have your new baseline energy signature. You have these upgraded coding variations that allow you to get certain gifts back, or just give you all around new gifts that you didn't even know you had, or whatever. New codings, new understandings, new comprehension levels, new capacities, all these new beautiful things, your spiritual birthrights, levels of protection, abundance, clarity, all these beautiful things that in the artificial realm you have to pay in fiat or blood, or compromise the integrity of your spirit, so to speak. You get it through doing the inner landscape work, right? And so, and then you have to maintain it. So after karmic clearing, you have to maintain the alignment of your mind, body, and spirit. This is your holy trinity. And you do that through your holy breath. And that is why people are doing breath work and kundalini yoga and moving back to nature. Nature corrects your breath naturally, where there's an abundance of nature, like jungles and shit. You don't have to do kundalini yoga or any of that stuff. You just have to sit in there, and your whole shit will be calibrated or recalibrated to match, if you will, that frequency. In contrast with whatever contracts you have, of course. But so when back to the essay, when a karmic clearing process has been obstructed, right? This makes us susceptible to being tracked by these characters in our old karmic cycle and all associated thought forms and spirits, potentially yanking us onto painful, less desirable timelines where the karmic imprints in your baseline energy signature still have high karmic resonance in charge. So, like I said, yeah, because you haven't cleared that karma, because you didn't see the baseline energy being shifted completely, now your ex or somebody with an identical energy signature can yank you back into those denser timelines. Even if you started the karmic, that's why some of you feel like, I was doing so good, I got a new house, and I don't know why, but I just let this new nigga move in with me, and I'm back going through the same shit that I went through with the nigga before him. Like, it's stuff like that, and it's because you had a obstructed karmic clearing process, and you didn't see it through the, yes? Yeah. And you didn't see it through the completion. And so you can be psychically attacked. You can be triggered easily. Like I said, you'll keep wanting to vent and you'll keep wanting to dump. You'll have certain blockages, maybe in intimacy. You'll have all these debris, if you will, from that cycle until you clear it out. And you won't really be able to elevate into any kind of higher, more harmonious timeline like you would like to until you do that, unfortunately, but fortunately. So these cords are linked to your old baseline energy signature, like I said, but will not be linked to or even will not be linked to new or even temporary ones that you may shift into. So, for instance, the person that I dealt with before, intimately, right? He can't trigger me. He can't track me. If he can, that means that my baseline energy signature hasn't completely shifted over into a new form of a new composition, right? Now, what was I gonna say? Shit, I had a thought that I was gonna share. Usually when your baseline energy signature completely changes, and those cords from the old one are no longer connected to the energy signature that you're inhabiting at the moment, you won't really be able to hold an image of the person in your mind's eye. Like, you'll fuck around, you'll try to think of them, and you'll remember their form, maybe you'll remember their stature, you might remember their hair, but it'll be hard for you to hold their face in your mind's eye. That's one of the things that I've noticed. I've also noticed that it'll feel like they were an imaginary character. Like, once my energy signature is completely changed, it'll feel like they weren't real. It'll feel like, did I even know her? My God, I don't feel like I knew her. Because it'll be like a new vessel, a new life, a new vibration, new everything. So it'll be hard for you to kind of, you'll remember obviously from your intellect and your objective mind, but you'll be so in the new composition that it'll be hard to remember in the way that you used to. Like, you might remember it through remembering their face, remembering how they made you feel. It might conjure up emotions and all this other stuff, but it won't be a remembrance in a way that makes you feel like it actually even happened. It'll feel like a blur, so to speak. That's usually a good indicator. The failure to completely change your baseline energy signature via seeing a karmic clearing cycle through to completion is also why many people find it difficult to let go or felt like they were on their way to freedom, yet somehow got stuck back in. Or sucked back in, I'm sorry. No, you don't. That's the thing. And I spoke about that And I want to talk about this too, because it's a thing. When you have a child with somebody, a lot of us are under, like, some of us are rapidly elevating in consciousness, and a lot of the mental constructs and paradigms and programs and beliefs and thoughts that we have around certain things are only just that. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to stay in contact with the child's father. You don't have to talk to a child's father. You don't have to do any of that stuff, given your karmic disposition and your spiritual wealth that you've been allotted, right? Also, the significance that a lot of you are feeling, like, oh, I gotta talk to him because that's the father. It's not that. That's more artificial timeline stuff. What you're feeling is that, yes, you have a damn near, and I wouldn't even say that. It's not even permanent, because life is infinite, eternal. Consciousness, I'm not going to get into all that lucid stuff. But you have a cord with the person that is stronger, right? More significant, because now you have a joined manifestation of two bloodlines, if you will, right? And the work that you do with yourself and the child as the mother, because the mother's the coder. I would say that the father is the programmer. So the mother is the coder. If the mother's the coder, she dictates everything. So if she is working with the offspring, right, and herself, and she's clearing out certain karma through them, because there's a cord to the father, that is going to trickle out into his life. And that is going to affect his karma, the way his life unfolds, without him having to really do much. He might have a fucking mental break. He might have a sudden realization, because that cord is still attached to him. So because the mothers are this is why I made the Collective Womb Alliance, because the women are the coders, because we're the timekeepers, the time bearers, the tastemakers, and they're just the programmers. We have the last say in how some shit goes. Now, if we don't want to assume responsibility over our spiritual checks and balances, governments, courts, police, and all that other shit have to come in to deal with our shit and clean our shit up. But we were supposed to be handling our shit in a sovereign capacity, which we don't really do. And handling it in a sovereign capacity is not about paperwork. It's about this work. This work comes first. Everything that manifests outside of that comes thereafter. It's not backwards. So don't get fooled into thinking that you can join some movement and do a little bit of paperwork and boom, your karma's cleared. No, you got to clear that karma first, and then you fuck around, don't even have to do no paperwork. That's how spiritual wealth goes. Spiritual wealth and your energy signature and all that dictates all of the discrepancies and the trials and tribulations that even manifest into your life, right? But if you can actually see a karmic clearing cycle through to completion and change your baseline energy signature, a lot of those cords get severed. And a lot of those things begin to take care of themselves, because by changing your energy signature, it'll collapse that denser paradigm, because these things of these higher ranks hold more weight than these dense things. These dense things are secondary to the energy signatures. The energy signatures, that's where the coding takes place. The coding assumes form into physical reality for us to experience if we disregard the formlessness of it, right? So we've been, a little bit bamboozled into thinking it's the latter, like it's the physical form first, and then when the physical form gets so fucked up, then we decide to look at the unseen. No, it's the other way around. So the moment that we start making those changes, like I said, even cords that you have formed to a father or a mother or whomever, like let's say you do a big chunk of karmic clearing, and you come back, you ain't have to send a letter. You ain't have to write a document. You ain't have to draft a template. You ain't have to do none of that shit. And maybe your baby father be like, yo, I had an awakening. And like, just when you come, like if y'all ever come back into each other's fields, be it in person or just in energy, right? He'll either, like when he comes into that changed, elevated energy signature that you've embodied, right? He's going to have to adapt, or he's going to get dismantled. Not by you, but just, it's kind of like science in a way. Like he's not going to be able to sustain himself in such a higher frequency, for lack of a better term. So that shit takes care of itself. It really does. People like, they want to battle and fight and do all this stuff. When they roll inward and they deal with whatever karma, protective orders are dropped, cases are dropped, things work in their favor, they don't have to lift a fucking finger. And that's when you know you got your spiritual wealth back. So no, you don't have to be in contact with no abusive ass baby father. What you have to figure out is what the fuck is in your energy signature and your whole history of your consciousness from here to fucking Timbuktu. What the fuck happened to even form that cord? Deal with that on an unseen level, and then the rest kind of trickles out. And he can't track you, he can't infiltrate you, he can't conjure you, he can't summon you. So if he wants access to you or the child, right, his baseline energy signature is going to have to adapt to yours, because you're the coder, you're the mother. It's not the other way around. We have stroke the ego of patriarchy, but patriarchy don't run the fucking show. That shit is secondary. Patriarchy is a mutation of matriarchy. If you want to be technical, when we talking about mutations and shit, it's a mutation. It's not the original. So again, once you change your baseline energy signature, you inevitably shift the child's. And if the father wants to be a part of that holy trinity, he has to change his baseline energy signature. And if he does not, if he will not, karma will do its thing. He can die. He can go crazy. His life will become shit. Y'all say this as, oh, my ancestors took care of your ass. No. His baseline energy signature is just not compatible with yours. This is a holy trinity that y'all have formed. Mother, baby, and father. If that nigga can't sustain the holy part of that trinity, he gotta go. Not because you kicked him out, but because he can't sustain it. Y'all whole shit will collapse his whole everything. It won't work. The coding needs to be compatible. The coding needs to be compatible. So, you know, if you can't comprehend that, you probably have a little ways to go, a little bit more karma to clear, and so on and so forth. And yes, same goes for family. The concept is universal. It's just that when it comes to mothers and baby fathers, or mothers and lovers and whatever, we romanticize it so much that when it's time to part ways, we have these obligatory illusions that don't exist. Most of them are just tradition. And even the traditions, we're holding true to some essence that we completely disregard. When they said keep the family together, they were talking about the Holy Trinity. Not just the Trinity. Not just the fucking form without the substance. Not just the three people keeping them together while everybody fucks each other up and re-traumatizes each other. That is not what they were talking about. They were talking about keep the Holy Trinity together. And if the shit's not holy, it's not a Holy Trinity. Y'all can have a Trinity. Create a whole hell for your child and yourself and your family. Go do that. That's artificial. But if you want to be a part of the natural order and the natural world and all of the wild shit that takes place in the organic world, you have to reclaim your birthrights. And your Trinity will be complete. And it does not have to be by that father. It doesn't. It does not. Y'all really underestimate the vastness of DNA, for real. If y'all sitting here seeing people get hijacked and possessed and all that shit, you can't possibly think that this one avatar is the only way to complete a Holy Trinity. Sometimes a man, a father can lose his soul, right? And then the energy signature that could have been his, that will be more compatible to complete your Trinity, will assume form in another avatar, another character that can actually sustain the new coding of this Holy Trinity that's been formed. And that can complete the Trinity. And it's not so much about the father in his form. It's about if he would have done the work. Let's take his role and his title and all that out of it. If he would have done the karmic work, his coding would have elevated to be a certain compilation of something, and that would have completed your Trinity. If he can't do it in that avatar, another one will assume form to fill that. And that is the actual spirit of the Father, or what would complete that Trinity, if y'all following me here. It's not about Tom, the father of my child that I had sex with, and he looks like you. No. You even have situations where a new father comes in, right? Or a stepfather comes in, the child start fucking looking like the new nigga. Why do y'all think that's happening? His fucking DNA is damn near mutating and changing. Because that's a new holy trinity that's been formed. Stop sleeping on DNA and what DNA can do. I mean, look at nature, god damn it. If you still underestimate how the fuck DNA can change in composition and shift and mutate and adapt, and y'all still clinging to the form of things without the substance, y'all gonna be clinging to a lot of corpses, a lot of dead people, a lot of stale ass, stifling ass, restrictive ass energy signatures that don't serve you out of some artificial obligation to the form without the substance. And you're gonna fucking keep a cycle going. As a matter of fact, fuck that, the child will keep the cycle going. You don't have to do that. And that's why I write essays like this. So I have to go into that because obviously I'm going through my own version of it. But I need y'all to understand, even if you can't comprehend it right now, I'm planting the seed. You do not have to settle or stick around for a child's father. You have to change your baseline energy signature and clear whatever karma for the sake of you and that seed as the mother, because you're the coder. And he either adapts or he dissolves. And energy is infinite. Energy is flexible. Energy can change all this other shit. The form is the form. The form ain't neither here nor there. Don't believe me? Like I said, look at possession. Look at mutation. Look at these phenomena in principle. That in and of itself should tell you that we should not be overtly investing in the form of something, in the physical manifestation of something. We have to look at the building blocks and the origin and the compatibility. And we can't make ourselves small because fucking coders, the women, are you serious? This whole process is a computer coding process. This is not just, oh, you're glowing. No. Everything that I've done through this, all the karmic clearing that I was thrusted into in this whole pregnancy is dictating the coding that this child is going to come into the world with. Not the presence of the fucking father. Low key, if I keep the father around, let's say the father's abusive and traumatizing and robs me of my peace, guess what the child's baseline energy signature is going to be when he comes out? What? Harmonious because the father's physically there? No. 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 Absolutely not. So please, let that shit sink into y'all heads. Now, remember I said questions are for tomorrow. Now, people that have been heavily influenced by artificial timelines opt for third dimensional band-aids, like I was just describing. That's a version of that. Such as blocking individuals, distractions, stimulants, cutting their hair, or other extreme changes in physical appearance, which gives them or onlookers the impression that their energy signature has changed. But like I said, since no karma has really been cleared, it actually is the same. Okay? So like I said, be careful when you have cords, when you have karmic cords on artificial timelines, be careful of falling for outfits, the way someone smells, the way someone dresses, all these things. Be careful of that. That's illusion magic. That has nothing to do with their baseline energy signature and the flexibility of their ability to change that in composition. And to be quite frank, the reason that me and Sharu's father have the relationship that we have is because he can change his energy signature very rapidly. He actually is low-key one of the people that taught me how to do that shit. Very rapidly. And so we remain compatible on some level. But he can comprehend most of what I can comprehend. And if he can't, he can shift his energy signature quite rapidly in order to comprehend it. And so even though he's not my boyfriend, he's not my lover, I'm not having sex with him and all that stuff, we still have our holy trinity intact. Right? And let's say I'm angry because he's not helping out in the financial ways and all that stuff. That's not representative of spiritual wealth, which is something that he used to always tell me. That's more so Nicole, you haven't reclaimed your birthrights. You're not honoring yourself. You're not even able to attract abundance and ease and all this stuff yet, because you have karmic debt that you haven't cleared. And instead of accepting that and working through that, you're going to get mad at him and say, hey, why you ain't sending me no da-da-da-da-da for your son? Right? But if I look at the actual wealth of the relationship that we have, and even the wealth that I've been granted through that relationship, he's paid well over the years that Sharu has been in physical form. He's paid me well over that. And if y'all can look at things in that way, you'll see that a lot of these men, the money's neither here nor there. Some of them are extremely spiritually wealthy, and if we can't look at them like that, we're low-key the toxic ones, to be quite frank. All right? And this is not, I'm not saying that, he's not human or he's any less than human or anything like that, but never once has the man degraded me or made me feel like less of a human or anything like that. Like, you have to pay attention to stuff like that. He never made my nervous system feel unsafe. It was actually the opposite. Like, to this day, I can think about him and cry because I feel so safe with him as a person. Not as a lover, not as a boyfriend, not as a husband. We're not on that type of time. We have a holy trinity. So that connection is still sacred, right? The reason that we got together was on the basis of what I'm discussing with you guys right now. He taught me most of this stuff. So our trinity is still sacred. You know what I'm saying? And it's not because of his form, but he actually did whatever caliber of work to be able to sustain his frequency in our lives, and vice versa, damn near. And when I couldn't, or when he couldn't, we couldn't even be in contact, because he would collapse my paradigm or I would collapse his. And we were just diligent enough to keep that going so that some other avatar didn't have to assume form. And some temporary avatars did assume form to fill in certain things, so certain more minute cycles could be cleared. But, it is what it is. So, and I don't even cling to him, the father, the person, the name, and all that stuff. It just so happens that the person was able to sustain whatever. But even if he couldn't, something would have. So that's that. Now the next section, why is the changing of my energy signature composition important? So why is it even important to be proficient at this? Why is it even important that your energy signature can change, especially within karmic context, if you will? So your energy signature's composition is influenced, manipulated, and changed by a variety of phenomena that we often overlook and undermine. If we knew how drastically the subtle shifts in our energy signature compositions could change the entire trajectory of how our consciousness animates itself, not only in this waking life, but across the multiverse and all associated karma, we would be a lot pickier with who, what, and where we formed our karmic contracts. Okay? So, we're going to talk about DNA mutation. So I talked about this briefly in the beginning, but I'm going to lean into it a little bit more. This isn't a really meaty section, but I'm still going to lean into it more specifically. DNA mutation, energy signature composition shifts from external sources. So when DNA is mutated, you can mutate your own DNA through karmic clearing or through breath work or through taking in a psychedelic or a plant medicine, and it'll be temporary or it can be long term depending on how much you tag team it. Like, you got the substance, but then you got your own karmic work that you're doing, and that allows the composition to remain changed. Not just a temporary thing and then you snap back into your old baseline signature and you have to keep taking psychedelics and keep doing ayahuasca and keep doing all these drugs just to experience this temporary energy signature that you don't have the courage or the balls or the spiritual wealth to sustain because you, for whatever reason. It can be a variety of reasons. So when someone else influences the composition of your energy signature in a harmoniously resonant way, this is usually what we call inspiration, right? This can be through music, through spoken work. This can be through acting. This can be through literary works. You may get chills or other bodily sensations, like I said earlier, triggered by the intelligence of your own nervous system. And this is why I say your nervous system is something that you should always be checking in with throughout your whole journey, as far as being aware of the quality of your energy field and what's going on in your subtle bodies and the type of karmic residues that are attempting to clear themselves, but you might be suppressing because on the artificial timelines, a part of the fine print to exist in those paradigms is to suppress nervous system cues, which keeps you karmically indebted, which keeps their paradigm intact, and so on and so forth. You can't clear karma and exist in those really super duper duper dense paradigms because you'll collapse them on sight. Your coding is more advanced. Theirs is more artificial. Their system is mimicking your organic system. So, you know, this is kind of like the same concept of us putting patriarchy before matriarchy, or putting the program before the coding. Like, this is a complex that we all struggle with because a lot of us have a lot of karmic cords in the artificial timelines. So, I'd like to call this mutating of the DNA by way of the person influencing, or the person, place, or thing. It could be anything. Whatever influences inspiration. Influencing a change in your breath. Inspiration. S-P-I-R. Spirit, breath, inspiration. Those words are in the word inspiration. So it's dealing with the breath, right? It's dealing with the spirit. Now, when you're inspired, your breath is changed. And things like powerful music compositions can also do this by summoning a multiplicity of spirits and thought forms on higher or lower timelines, right? Or planes of existence, and grant the inspired listener, which would be yourself, through changing their breath with a broader alchemical capacity, changing their energy signature temporarily, and also activating dormant gifts and all kinds of seemingly magical things, etc. But of course, these changes must be sustained via maintaining your own spiritual checks and balances through things like karmic clearing, spiritual cleanliness, etc. Or it will be a fleeting feeling, right? There are some musical, and this is why the music industry is so severely guarded, because yeah, as far as they're concerned, okay, as far as they're concerned, y'all can all be inspired and change these people's breaths and do all this stuff, but they can't be clearing no karma though, right? So this is why it's important what kind of music you listen to, because depending on the music composition, which has its own coding and its own energy signature, right? There can be embedded thought forms and spirits in that music from higher or lower planes of consciousness. Think about the music. Trap music, The Weeknd, what's that new music that it's some new, it's like trap but worse. Something music. Those are lower planes of existence. Vibrationally speaking, you can feel it. Like when you listen to it, it'll start to inspire you to do certain things like fuck or fight or get high or drink. Drill music. There we go. Demon realm music. Drill music. This is a lower plane of consciousness, and it'll change your energy signature temporarily upon listening to it, right? And then, you know, you'll want to do all these things that have cords to that temporary energy signature: drinking, smoking, fucking, killing, whatever. Or it can do the opposite. It can be a higher plane of consciousness that music composition frequency was on, or that coding entailed, right? It will, I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. You will activate gifts. You will start to like for instance, I'll give you some of my favorites since I do a lot of energy signature work through music. To be fair, let me not be biased. Sometimes you can listen to some really dark music and it can actually shaman you through the underworld. So when you're in the middle of karmic clearing and you're being prompted to die, and then you got to go through the shadow work in the underworld, and then you got to be reborn, some music allows you, or serves, it's so dark, but also has such a unique energy signature composition or coding itself that it can shaman you through the underworld. You just can't get stuck there, you know? it's not to say that high or low music is bad. It depends on the alchemical significance of what you're using it for, what you're doing with it. And so, for instance, like, if I were to be biased, I'd be like, why would you do trap yoga? Why would you listen to trap while giving birth? Why would you do any of that? But only the mother, the coder, the alchemist, the timekeeper, right? Only she knows what other coding variations, be it through music or anything else, right, can alchemize well with her coding in that moment to be able to put her in a position, even just temporarily, so that she can do whatever underworld work she needs to do, right? So it's not like I said, you can have your own bias about like, oh yeah, you shouldn't be listening to these dark things in these holy spaces. But if you understand alchemy, and if the person is actually intentional, I would say don't do trap yoga and don't listen to trap during birth if you don't know what the fuck you're doing and you don't know why you're doing it and you're just kind of whatever. But if you understand the alchemy, like I said, that it can do, and helping you to change your energy signature temporarily to inhabit spaces that allow you to work through darker karmas, more underworld, shadowy aspects of yourself, and better integrate them. It's not a permanent energy composition change. It's temporary. And then once you work through that and you retrieve that aspect of your power, you can then shift back into your baseline energy signature. And if you're giving birth, boop, baby comes out, right? So these things that temporarily mutate your DNA and or change your energy signature composition, they should be handled with responsibility. So now we're going to talk about timeline jumping, dimensional travel, and time travel, right? Anything that you see on TV shows with time travel being inside of a contraption and machine, artificial world shit. They don't have the birthrights to time travel with their consciousness alone, so maybe they would do something like that. I don't know how that actually works because I don't have to do that. But I would imagine that that would be the artificial interpretation of what one would have to do. Given the karmic contracts that they have with the artificial world, yeah, you got to climb into a dense-ass machine to time travel or something. But time travel is a completely internal process. You're right. Even being vegan, it's an alchemical tool. It's not something that should be fixed. When you go vegan or you go plant-based, you are shifting your energy signature, and the lightness or the space that it puts you in, the discipline that you have to go through to sustain it, the cravings that you have to deal with when you first go vegan, or the changes to your body that you have to deal with, that can thrust you into a variety of different shadow works and sacrifices that you have to make. I mean, it's a sacrifice in and of itself, but sometimes you make sacrifices within that and all these other things. And then you clear out a lot of karma in that space, and then you can go back to eat meat and replenish yourself, because in that space, when you cleared out that karma, you obtain the alchemical abilities that would allow you to alchemize different types of meat in your body, and you will learn what your body's asking for and learn how to give it to your body. But it's baby steps. You just went from a place of just eating because somebody said eat, and getting all this disease and all this breakouts and all this stuff, not necessarily because of the food, but because you didn't know your body well enough to alchemize any of the things that you put in your body. I know people that when they're trying to summon a fire element, they're so alchemically advanced, they will eat fucking flaming hot Cheetos just to summon a certain type of fire. And they'll work with that element, and it won't give them a disease or anything. And they also won't eat it in excess because they don't need it in excess, right? And even fasting, sometimes that's just, a lot of it is just alchemical and recalibration, and it has its own level of shadow work and death and rebirth and all the stuff that is synonymous to the karmic clearing processes I described earlier. So back to timeline jumping, dimensional travel, time travel. So this is a topic that a lot of you guys ask me about a lot, especially timeline jumping, and a lot of people are using that term, and they're like, yeah, because you can jump timelines in the season of Leo, but they're not giving you guys any context, and you need context to actually understand what the fuck it is. And the only context that I was able to give you was through my experiences, but I think that understanding baseline energy signatures and the composition of your energy signature all around changing can give you a shit ton of insight on what is actually happening in those spaces. So the phenomena of timeline jumping, dimensional travel, and time travel are only possible when one has a certain proficiency level at changing their energy signature at will, or at least being open enough to allowing it to change spontaneously, even if that means that you got to remain a passenger for the time being. So think about this. A lot of us, when we first started our journeys, when we first woke up, we were doing all this dimensional travel, having these experiences, hearing these voices, and we were like a passenger to the experience, which was kind of scary because it was just like, what the fuck is going on? We were just in the artificial timeline, and now we have worlds across the multiverse overlapping and beings talking to us, voices, and it's all this shit, right? And we're dimensional traveling and we're time traveling, but we don't know how to control it yet. But our energy signatures they're just change. Like, and sometimes that shit can be traumatizing, and sometimes it can be frightening if you don't understand what's happening. So I'm just going to go into a few examples of what that can look like. So plant medicines, drugs, psychedelics, and other stimulants, right, change your energy signature temporarily. And sometimes I won't get into the intricacies of that, because sometimes people get stuck in a temporary energy signature because it was a part of a significant karmic clearing process, and they didn't want to make a sacrifice. And the sacrifice is what would thrust them into the new energy signature, or even being able to let go would even allow them to go back to their old energy signature if they wanted to, but they're not willing to do either, so they're in limbo with this temporary signature, which is kind of like somebody doing a psychedelic and never being the same. Right? So, plant medicines, drugs, psychedelics, other stimulants change your energy signature temporarily, allowing you to time travel and things. However, if you don't have enough spiritual wealth at the time of doing commerce with these plants and these stimulants, because remember, everything is commerce, everything is trading, it can distort your coding. It can distort your energy signature to the point where you become severely out of touch and out of harmony with your reality until someone or something has enough prana and can be of aid, or until you make a large enough sacrifice to grant you the prana to aid yourself, which most people aren't willing to do because they're too wrapped up in the schizoid element of what's taking place. So having abundance of prana is synonymous to having an abundance of spiritual wealth. And in the case of ascended masters, this would be having no karma, which allows them to heal and perform miracles in a way that does not rob them or land them in severe karmic debt of any sort. Now, and people, ascended masters that have this mastery level consciousness where they have all this abundance of prana, an infinite source of prana, an infinite regenerative source of prana, granting them literally no karma, like they can't even accumulate none, and they can come into your presence and clear yours by touching you and shit. It doesn't land them in any kind of severe karmic debt. But for those of us that are still working on mastering our checks and balances and our breath and things like that, we have to be really careful. I've had people, understand that I've traveled a lot and I have a lot of different variations of coding. So they reach out to me and they're like, hey, Nicole, I've been hijacked and da-da-da-da-da. And I literally be like, I cannot help you. Not because I don't understand what's happening to them. Not because of any of that stuff. It's because I know that I can't spiritually afford to help you. I don't have enough prana for that. You need a shit ton of prana to help you with exactly what you're dealing with. And I don't have it. And if I try to extend it to you and I form a contract with you, and I get into the intricacies of forming karmic contracts in my shadow work ebook. So if y'all want to understand karmic contracts, y'all got to get that, because I didn't really go into it that deeply here. But if I go and let's say you're like, I'll give you $5,000. I'll give you $300,000, Nicole, please just help me. I've been hijacked and infiltrated and somebody implanted something in my consciousness and whatever, right? And let's say I ain't got no integrity. And I'm like, $500,000, I can buy some land with that. But this person is spiritually bankrupt. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the predicament that they were in, meaning that their fiat is obsolete and cursed. So, and not cursed as in they're a bad person, they're an evil person, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So you accept the money, fuck. Depending on the level of engagement, if you even start spiritually entertaining the reality of doing something you know you can't fucking do or shouldn't do, right? That's commerce. If you accept the fucking money, it's definitely commerce. You, my friend, have formed a karmic contract. And not only that, the fiat is obsolete because they don't have any spiritual wealth. And you didn't have any spiritual wealth to do that caliber of work with them to begin with. So guess what happens? While you have $500,000 in your bank account and you can buy land and all that shit, the land will be cursed. Shit won't grow. You'll be robbed of. Now, look, prana is going to be pulled from all these other areas of your life to compensate for what you didn't fucking have. So now you're going to get to losing all this shit that you probably worked your ass off for, kind of like when you in debt and they're like the IRS comes, or whoever the fuck them people are, and they come and they just start taking all your valuables. They're like, yeah, this is to pay off all the shit that you borrowed that you couldn't fucking afford. Spiritually, that will start to happen, and it'll make you feel like you're cursed, and you'll be karmically indebted to that person until you pay that off through whatever medium, depending on your karmic disposition. It can be through breath. It can be through deep karmic work. It can be through 5 long years of straight up hell. It can be a variety of different things. So, yes. I said that already. So, yeah, make sure that you're not doing commerce with people. And that's just an extreme example. We do this on lesser levels. We do this on lesser levels all the time with our businesses, and that's what my intuitive marketing mini course is about. It's about sacred commerce, and it's about having spiritual integrity when doing commerce and not just being artificial and handling our businesses and our offerings and our sacred works as a corporation would, right? It's not about that. So you have to be careful with that. And yeah. So, now we have the karmic significance of breath. No matter what influences the change in your energy signature composition, the change in your actual breath is what dictates whether or not that composition shift will result in you primarily animating your consciousness on a denser plane, artificial timelines, or higher planes, which are natural, more organic timelines. Stop that. Right? So your breath is, your breath will dictate whether or not that energy signature composition shift will result in you primarily, because remember, this is a dual plane. So, we like to think that, I'm going to be on a natural timeline forever and I'll never be in an artificial timeline ever again because it's evil, wicked, and bad. No. If you have enough spiritual wealth, you can be on an artificial timeline and come out unscathed. It's the problem is when you have too much karma and you're too severely karmically indebted, and then you have a bunch of cords linked to an artificial timeline. That's when it's of your detriment and you start to feel dead inside, depressed, unfulfilled, and all those things. But when you go and you pay off a lot of karma, do what I did when I went to the jungle. Carissa, if you're still in here, Carissa did it. Is your damn name Carissa? I only know her as Rissa. But you go off and you build up your prana reserve and you reinstate your own internal ecosystem and you get acquainted with your inner landscape and you build up all this spiritual wealth. Now you can afford to time travel and exist on artificial timelines, and you can temporarily shift your signature at will just for an occasion, and it doesn't compromise your whole fucking baseline signature because you can snap back into whatever your baseline signature was, which is that maintenance that I'm talking about after you complete a karmic clearing cycle. But some people, they don't have the spiritual wealth to do that. So when they go into an artificial timeline, they get stuck there. They get trapped there. So your breath dictates a lot of that. Now, the holy breath which is diaphragmatic breath, and the associated prana reserve that is built thereof, right? Is what clears karma, aligns your holy trinity, which is your mind, body, and spirit, and allows you to be one with God or divinity. This is what keeps you connected to God. Sometimes, like when holy breath is compromised and you're breathing shallow, you're sucked into denser timelines, you're kind of gridlocked in artificial timelines, and you lose your connection to God, perceivably speaking. Not in terms of consciousness being connected to the all and all that stuff, but as you experience it as a incarnate, you will feel disconnected from God. Because a lot of people will be like, we're never disconnected because consciousness is the all and we're all consciousness. Yeah, but you're still an incarnate, meaning the way that you perceive that is heavily influenced by your karmic disposition and the way that you interpret the world and life and your experiences. And while that is a universal fact, that's not how we all experience it all the fucking time. Because if that's the case, what the fuck is the point of this realm, right? Where consciousness experiencing itself, and the way that we experience, or the way consciousness experiences itself, can vary. So natural environments like Costa Rica, where I was for 5 years, or Mexico, where Rissa was, or wherever you went to isolate in the jungle to do your inner work, if any of you guys have embarked on that journey at any point. Natural environments that still have their ecosystems intact serve to clear your field of the karmic imprints that prevent your energy signature composition from shifting into a more advanced format. So you'll find that when you spend extended time in the jungle, or really deep in the jungle, where everything is pure and everything is like nothing's being obstructed, there are no Wi-Fi signals, there's barely any human influence, it's like it's clearing shit out. It is still sustainable as far as karmic clearing is concerned, right? It'll shift your energy signature into a more advanced format, and help you to clear karma without having to do so much deliberate, I'm going to do Kundalini yoga, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. All you have to do is be present and sit in that motherfucker, and all that shit will start to happen by itself. It's only when we're in environments with compromised ecosystems that don't have elemental value, like deep jungles that have all these Wi-Fi signals and artificial constructs, that we have to come and go out of our way and do integrative practices like breath work and yoga and this, just so that we can maintain that harmony that we naturally would just have if we were just in our natural environments, right? So when your energy signature is shifted into a more advanced format, which opens you up to higher opportunities, experiences, and timelines. However, and by higher opportunities, experiences, and timelines, I'm saying things like, I want a watermelon, rides bike, a guy selling watermelon. Man, I just want to dance. You get to town, somebody invites you to a dance, and you get to, you're just aligning with everything because you're in harmony with the environment and you're in harmony with yourself and you're ever present. So you're experiencing eternal life essentially through the expression of your consciousness through this limited vessel, right? However, these changes must be maintained via the upkeep of your spiritual checks and balances. So don't think that you can go through all that magic and not get sucked up into some bullshit if you don't maintain those checks and balances. It's happened to me. I spent 5 years in the jungle, came back to the States, and still experienced something traumatizing, because I didn't or couldn't or both sustain the energy signature that the jungle allotted to me, that advanced format that I was operating in. I didn't sustain it. I didn't maintain it. I didn't engage in the proper maintenance at all. So, be careful of that. Yes. Oh, yeah? So now we're going to get into illusion magic, temporary energy signature composition changes, and the olfactory bulb, which is your sense of smell. So this is a lot of the illusion work that we see in the artificial timelines. And when I was in my prime on Instagram, when I had 20K and I was like coming at people's necks and dragging people online and tearing down platforms and all that shit because of my own personal biases, which were karmically induced, I must say. what I was really getting at was feeling like I was a victim to illusion magic, and that everybody else was a victim to illusion magic. And the moment that I was able to see through it, I was like, I gotta tell everybody, right? And so I was airing people out and trying to expose people and calling people out and just sharing my very, very severely unfiltered, condescending opinions, right? So let's start with the olfactory bulb. So the olfactory bulb is located in this hemisphere of your nose. I don't know the science, but is associated with your sense of smell, and I had to study it very briefly when I became a seller of doTERRA oils. So the olfactory bulb is a way for one to temporarily change your energy signature to do inner work, or like inner work like through essential oils and diffusing things and sage and Palo Santo. You're working with your olfactory bulb, right? This helps you to change your energy signature temporarily, right? So that you can do a certain caliber of clearing, inner work, etc., right? Or it will alter the perceived composition of another person's energy signature, which is more artificial. These are colognes and perfumes and all these things that cover the real smell of your armpits, the real pheromones that you emit as per your hormonal composition and all that jazz, which is also linked to your karma, but that's a whole nother story. Like, you know how they say spirits stink and spirits have a smell? It's kind of channeling through the olfactory bulb rather than, I mean, you can feel like it stinks, but half the time it's not even necessarily that it stinks. It's just that your olfactory bulb is picking up on the energy signature and it's disturbing the harmony in your vessel. And you can feel like, or you can say like, oh shit, there's a bad energy here because it reeks, or in severely unclean and filthy infested places, it has a smell. And it's not necessarily the trash in the corner or whatever. It's a scent to it. You're picking up on that through your olfactory bulb. Yes. Yeah. And your environment has, like the energy of an environment, that has its own coding. So when you temporarily change your energy signature, you can transmute the whole fucking vibe of the house, right? So again, when it goes back to the form without the substance, when we're clinging to things like sage for clearing energies and stuff, the sage is not clearing the energy. The sage is entering your olfactory bulb, it's changing your energy signature temporarily, and then from that space, you're allotted certain alchemical tools that then allow you to clear your space. Because then, like, think about it, when you first burn sage and you start clearing, if you really take it in and you really, like, you know, get to doing that work, and you're not just pinning the significance on the physical form of the sage, you start to feel things. Whatever discomforts or icky feeling, oh, we don't feel right in here, the sage, after it enters your olfactory bulb and changes your signature, it allows you to work through those things and alchemize those things. And once you alchemize those bad vibes or those feelings, which could very well be coming from your ass, or it can be something, some debris that you picked up on because your field is not strong enough to keep you protected from that yet, which is a spiritual birthright, which is strengthened through breath and things like that, or built prana, right? You can transform the entire energy of the space. Kind of similar to when a person has such a big energy that they walk in and they light up a room, right? That's a more common way of people understanding it. It's about the same thing. So again, when you're burning Palo Santo and you're burning sage and you're working with essential oils, all of these things can induce time travel, dimensional travel, and all those things, which are internal processes. Again, I know the artificial world and all their Hollywood movies and shit make it seem like it's an externalized process, which is illusion magic to perpetuate that the program comes before the coder, or the father comes before the mother, or the patriarch comes before the matriarch, right? That's the biggest spell that we got to crack here. And it's not in terms of hierarchy, it's really in terms of natural order, to be real. Then we have, like, in the artificial world, you can alter the perceived composition of a person's energy signature, which is, again, yeah, which is dealing with illusion magic and making you feel things that you wouldn't have otherwise felt, or making you feel like, oh, I'm attracted to him, he smells so good. But if you smelled that man's pheromones, or if your olfactory bulb picked up on his pheromones, you would not be trying to feel any of those things, right? I like to call this, oh, yeah, I said that. Right. I like to call this one of many forms of illusion magic, which is primarily done on artificial timelines, where the spiritual senses are dulled, right, by most people, or within most people, and the five senses are overtly relied on. So again, when we're dealing with victims to illusion magic, we're dealing with people that have that primarily exist on artificial timelines, meaning they have a higher ratio of karmic contracts that link them to or bind them to, or that have cords connected to the artificial timelines. And until they break those cords, sever those cords through whatever karmic clearing and so on and so forth, they're very, 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 very reliant on their five senses, and their spiritual senses are significantly dulled, if not completely dulled. So this is why people get to fall for people that are not really doing any kind of spiritually significant or powerful work, but they have this hat on their head and they're sitting like this, and they fucking have a high resolution video that makes it feel official, because growing up the news had that same kind of clarity. So now subconsciously you associate high quality videos with people of power, and it's illusion magic. So until your spiritual senses are no longer dulled, you'll continue to fall for illusion magic and the subconscious implications based on the seeds that were planted when you were younger. So, on the other hand, using things like essential oils, right? This is going back to the olfactory bulb in a more beneficial way, I guess. Cross the blood-brain barrier and can transform your breath and energy signature temporarily in such a profound way that you are spontaneously taken through unexplored dimensions of your own inner landscape and all associated outer expressions thereof. So essential oils that I found to facilitate dimensional travel the best are frankincense, myrrh, patchouli, lavender, vetiver, and sandalwood. The last time I combined those oils and diffused them, I was taken through to a memory from, I went, it was crazy. It was like 6 hours of a straight up trance. I wasn't asleep, but I went to so many different places. And those different, remember, these scents, these essential oils are from plants, and these plants have their own energy signatures and associated histories and things like that. So those plants codes can embed certain new coding variations into your energy signature, transform them temporarily, and now you get to do things like, especially when they're ancient plants and holy plants or holy resins or holy woods like frankincense or sandalwood and things. They're really ancient, so to speak. And by ancient, I mean of a higher rank than most things. And yes, vetiver as well. And can really facilitate time travel and interdimensional travel and things like that. So you want to do that kind of work. Yeah. So next section, how easy is this a title? Oh, how people who easily I'm gonna have to edit this again because I was just channeling. But yeah, patchouli is one of my jams too. So how energy signature compositions affect, like how people whose energy signatures change very rapidly and quickly, how they affect those of us that are gifted, and how this ease of composition change is often mistaken for mental illness. So the changing of one's energy signature composition is particularly hard for channelers, seers, and shadow workers, initially at least, right? Because before we manage to acquire a certain level of spiritual wealth, the transition between our baseline energy signature and our temporary energy signature that we embody as induced by our gifts of seership or mediumship or channeling or whatever, it can be a bit unstable and erratic at first. If any of you guys have those kinds of gifts, like I'm a seer and I'm a shadow worker and I do channeling, I don't really engage in mediumship, but I am intimately connected to the purgatory realm. I just don't do that kind of work because I don't want to contract with them, because everything's commerce, right? So it can be a bit unstable and erratic when you first wake up, because you don't have enough of your birthrights back to be able to integrate in a harmonious way that isn't like so turbulent, right? This is often mistaken for schizophrenia, mental illness, etc., which I broke down earlier in this live, especially when the individual gets attached to or identifies too deeply with that of a temporary energy signature shift. So sometimes, like, let's say we're just now getting used to our baseline energy signature changing erratically, and we talk to a dead person, or we get taken over and we channel some being, and their energy signature pretty much hijacks ours, and we're channeling them and all of their history and their trauma, and it feels like ours and all that stuff, and then they leave, but we're still attached to the experience because we identified too much with how that felt in our vessels. That can be mistaken for mental illness a lot. And if you really listen from the ear or from the lens of what I'm explaining, a lot of your mentally ill friends and family members, if you listen to them from this lens, a lot of what they're saying you can kind of make sense of, but you can't listen to it from, there's nobody here, or no, that didn't happen, you made that up. Like, you got to understand the multiverse, timelines, potentialities, them overlapping. That's a lot for a person whose energy signatures can change that easily. And sometimes they're having a really hard time balancing it out because they don't have enough spiritual wealth. So that's why they need a practitioner, a shaman, or an energy worker in any regard that has enough prana to work with them and to help them with that. Not a pill or whatever else y'all be doing to these people. Now, shadow workers. Shadow workers shapeshift by changing their energy signatures temporarily to assume the form of an avatar or a character of high karmic resonance in someone's story that draws out that individual's repressed aspects or shadows in efforts to empower the individual and facilitate them graduating into higher levels of consciousness, which also grants them spiritual wealth upon paying off that karmic debt or seeing that karmic clearing through to completion. Now, my ebook that I released on Intro to Understanding Life as a Shadow Worker leans all the way into this. And if there are any shadow workers in here, or people that find that their life has pretty much encompassed drawing out people's shadows and animating people's shadows, and just not having any control over it, or not having any control or awareness over it, or not understanding how to leave the individual in the underworld to deal with their own shit, and having misdirected empathy, my ebook really helps y'all to put that into perspective. And I have an apprenticeship program that'll give y'all more examples and all that other stuff. Because the thing is, let's say, let me give you an example of what it's like for a typical shadow worker. Now, FYI, we all do this. Like the essence of being a shadow worker is not about the fact that you do this. It's about the fact that you're conscious that you're doing it and can hold that consciousness and awareness and actually alchemize the situation with held awareness. Not the fact that you're doing it. The whole earth realm is about us all animating each other's karma and all that stuff. We all do this shit. But to do it consciously as a line of work, and being aware of a person's cosmic consent that they might not be conscious of, and being okay with the fact that they're not aware of it, and still knowing that you're being contracted through their repressed aspects, right? Because what's summoning you is not their conscious self. It's their repressed aspects, or their inner child, or the demons that they haven't worked through and that they haven't integrated into the wholeness of themselves. Those aspects of them are what are summoning you. They're not conscious of those aspects because they're repressed and stuffed away. So when you start to realize that those aspects are summoning you, and this can seem like, okay, you walk into a space, you see a girl, and you're just like, I just want to have a shit attitude. Like your whole energy signature shifts, and you're just like beside yourself, like I don't fuck with her, and you just start acting different. And it's not that you really dislike her. And it's not even that this is reflective of your baseline energy signature. This is literally you animating something that's going to draw out those repressed aspects of them for them to deal with it. And a lot of us just do it, but we don't realize that we're doing it, right? And so we do it. The person's shadow aspects come out. We feel bad. And then we misdirect our empathy. And then we do the person the hugest disservice, which is going to the underworld with them, getting trapped, getting too entangled into the process of them retrieving that aspect of themselves. And then we end up having to get our damn selves out of the underworld. And then that person ends up hating us. Like, if we do it wrong, they end up hating us and associating us with being a bad, fucked up person and all this other stuff, when really we're shadow workers. So the book that I published the other day is on my website, or you can find it in the link under my bio, is Intro to Being, to Understanding Life as a Shadow Worker, Energy Signatures, Shape-Shifting, and Underworld Work. So it puts all that stuff into great detail, especially karmic contracting. Because here's the thing. If you're significantly acquainted with the underworld, right? A lot of people's shadow aspects are going to be like, get us out of here. This bitch is crazy. This bitch is not expressing us. This bitch is not honoring us. She's not doing any of the things, like, help us, help us, help us. And this can be expressed in a negative way or a positive way, right? But if you're conscious of it, which is what my ebook is about, when you can remain conscious of it, that makes it all the more better. A lot of the things that y'all saw me, y'all didn't know this at the time, and I was hinting at it, but I didn't break it down in this way. When I was in my online influencership prime, when I had that 20K and I was coming to people's necks, I was drawing out their shadows, and I was with them in the underworld. And then with some of them, I would pull out just fast enough and leave them in the underworld by themselves. You got to know that that's in their best interest. You're not being detached. You're not being an asshole. You're not being whatever. You have to pull out in a timely enough fashion. If you don't, you get stuck in that energy signature that was supposed to be only meant to draw out their shadows. You get not only stuck in that energy signature, but stuck in that energy signature in the underworld. And you're interfacing with the individual, and it becomes violent, it becomes staticky, it becomes icky, it becomes all this stuff. You fuck around in the underworld, you lose your gifts. You lose a lot of access to a lot of your birthrights. And then you have to now pull yourself out of that, try to handle the person in their shadow aspect, not trying to fucking kill you. And then, you know, all this stuff. But if you can manage to pull yourself out in time, right? They're left in the underworld to deal with their shit. And usually once they clear the karma and make their way out, they will circle back and apologize to you. But they don't have the spiritual wealth to do it yet. So that's why you have to understand timing. And I've done both. I have people where I've said things and like, it was just like bizarre shit. Like they will come and they're just loving on me and stroking my ego or just showing me love. And I'm just like mean or rude. And I do that and then I vanish. And then they're like feeling all the ways and they might send me all these things. Then I block them. And then I'll get an email a year later, 2 years later, or maybe a few months later. Hey, Nicole, this is so-and-so. You may not remember me, but we had a quarrel online. And I just want to say thank you. Because you saying that stuff pushed me back into the thing with my mother. And my mother used to do this to me. And this is all these things that if you're not conscious that you're a shadow worker or that you're really good at the shit, you'll just kind of be like, oh, you're welcome. But, you know, you have the choice to accept or decline a contract. Like, you don't have to let yourself be contracted by any person. So when I was in my prime, in my influencerhood, I loved being contracted. Like, I was like, who want to do it next? Like, I just loved being, like, this is when I was on that dark goddess shit. Remember, if y'all been around long enough, I was heavy on the dark goddess tip and animating my shadows and being the dark feminine, all that. So I was loving it because I had otherwise suppressed that. And so I was contracting with any and everybody. And this was me saying I want to smoke. Remember that? I was contracting with hella people, men, women. I didn't give a fuck who it was. And that's kind of how I learned these things. But then I also learned the mistake of getting too entangled. Now, I also go into in my ebook, I go into when you put your pants down. When you, yeah, when you choose, Yeah, when you choose to contract with someone for when someone wants to contract with you for you to draw out their shadows, right? If you guys' energy signatures have a karmic resonance, now this is not just you being contracted. You're contracting them and they're contracting you. And you have to make sure that you assess your karmic disposition, their karmic disposition, your spiritual wealth, and their spiritual wealth to make sure that the risk and rewards factor even makes fucking sense. Huh? Yeah, pull your pants up. And sometimes it like when you have a karmic resonance with somebody that's trying to contract you, and it becomes like a mutual thing, yeah. It feels irresistible. Like even if it's negative, it doesn't have to be positive or enticing. It can be completely negative and toxic, and you just can't stop going back. You can't stop letting them in, whatever. You have to assess those things. So I walk through that process in my ebook as well. Let me see. Makes sense. We can become heartbreakers doing this, and that comes with a price. Yeah, I've broken hella people's hearts. There's some people, they're still in the underworld from shit that I've drawn out of them. Literally. And I depending on how entangled I became, if I made it out of the underworld and they're still there, it is a heartbreaking sight. I'm not going to lie, but they would have had to do it regardless. That's the thing. It's just that you were who they chose because your unique composition or gift or ability to animate a variation of coding without being scared or being off-put or hesitating because you're like, oh, I don't want to be mean. Oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings. Oh, I don't want to, like, you can't worry about none of that when you're being contracted as a shadow worker. And this is not to justify just being a dick. This is not to do that. I used to think that that's what I was doing too. It's a very delicate balance in integrity, compassion, and awareness that you have to have. And the only way that you can sustain that is by taking the initiative to actually do this stuff consciously, which is what I teach in the ebook. And in the apprenticeship program to follow up. Like if you find that you read the ebook and you're like, oh shit, I need this help because as a shadow worker, you got to deal with having such a bad rap for whatever period of time that it takes the individual to clear the karma. So, and then not to mention that sometimes people be in the underworld 2, 3, 4, 5 years and they don't want to be there alone. So they'll attract people with similar karmic cords that have certain karmic resonances, and they'll come together to tear you apart. They're all in the underworld together and they're just like, fuck her, because they're down there pretty much in hell. No abundance, no protection, no birthrights, no nothing. And they're steady blaming you as a shadow worker, but it's them that has them trapped, not necessarily you. So that's where it gets tricky. And my life was hell before I actually understood what that was about and what I was doing and how intense it was. And it was just an intense lifestyle. And it wasn't until I learned, you know, the whole timing of pulling out of the underworld and just the fact that I was in the underworld with people or dragging them there and then having to leave them there and let them do what they do and tangle with their demons or have a cup of tea with their demons and all that stuff, that I was like, okay, this is not something that I can just do loosely. I have to be diligent with the alchemy that I do in these spaces. You did a lot of work for a lot of folks in Costa Rica. I know. And I got entangled too. That the trauma with what happened with me in Costa Rica was more entanglement than my shadow work abilities. But I was drawing out like so many people's shadows at once, and that's actually why I don't have that many friends, because when it gets to that point, I'm like, oh gosh, and then I usually separate myself because I don't want to be that for everybody. I don't want to hurt people's feelings, or I don't want to lose decent relationships, but sometimes I can't help myself. And you know, you do lose a lot of friends and you are alone. Like my pre-K teacher actually told my aunt that, like, she probably couldn't grasp it in this, you know, capacity, but she told my aunt that what did she say? She was like, she's gonna be alone for most of her life. And she probably, again, didn't understand it in this capacity, but what she was picking up on was probably the fact that I did that. I was very strange and very peculiar as a child. I was very dark. And the reactions that I drew out of people wasn't normal. Like, kids would all play together, and then I would get with a certain kid, and a certain version of that kid comes out, and then a certain version of that kid comes out. And it's more uncontrollable when you're a child because you don't have all these like fictitious layers, so you're just doing it damn near. But it's not until I got older, you know, when I got older, instead of leaning into the gift, I started putting layers, people pleasing, being a yes woman, not having boundaries and all that other stuff. And it became terrible because I still spent a lot of time in the underworld, and I still was very deeply acquainted with it. But it just, yeah, it was very painful. So I made that book for other shadow workers that are isolated or are always losing friends or have bad reputations because you can't control your gift yet, you know, and you can control the gift. And no, you don't have to do it, but the situations where it feels like you don't have a choice, you have a karmic resonance with that individual that's trying to contract you as well. You don't always have karmic resonances with every person that summons you to do shadow work, but in the event that you do, it will feel more choiceless. It will feel like, damn. Just like bitches that get with abusive men. They don't want abusive niggas. They don't want toxic men. But it feels kind of choiceless for them. They still go and fuck. They still go and get pregnant and have 5 kids. It's the same principle. They can't resist it damn near. And yes, the book on this shadow work stuff is in the link under my bio. It's called Intro to Understanding Life as a Shadow Worker. And if you want to get into deeper work and understand the intricacies and the very merciless nature of this work, which is why most people don't explore the topic, I have an apprenticeship program, very low maintenance because, hello, but I'm going to do trainings for 4 weeks at a time, and then after I give birth, I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to open it up for the next 50 women and so on and so forth, because I feel like the more women and people in general consciously do shadow work and reclaim their gifts as shadow workers, even if individuals don't take care of their spiritual checks and balances, the underworld workers will have reclaimed enough stake to balance out this overt light work shit. Like, we need underworld workers too, because now, even if individuals aren't taking care of their own spiritual checks and balances, if the underworld workers are doing what the fuck they're supposed to do, they're going to be drawing out shit anyway, and people are going to be forced to pay off karma, just like changes in the world are happening. The artificial world that we know, the system, the government, the USA, they're not going to be able to manage our checks and balances for that long. So we have to start reclaiming our roles in this whole, you know, ecosystem. And so, you know, a lot of us are going to have to step back into that role with bringing that stuff out of people. And inevitably so, they will have to deal with their karma. But, you know, for now, it's done through police brutality, fucking evictions and fucking mortgages and all that other dumb shit. But once all that shit dissolves and it's just us and us, the underworld workers need to be on standby. Like, we need to be on call, because a lot of people are going to be thrusted with their shadows if they aren't already. If COVID wasn't enough, COVID, the quote unquote, not the actual disease, if that wasn't enough of a test run of what the fuck shadow animations is going to look like, hold on. Yeah, so if the shadow workers are still being people pleasers and yes men and being scared of hurting people's feelings and all that other shit, we're doomed. Really. We got enough people that are just like, and they have their role and shit, but in excess, it becomes insincere. And right now, it's in excess. Real shit. And even the people that are calling themselves shadow workers, they're just doing nasty freak shit. Like, they're in this, they're like in step 1 of 7 of reclaiming the dark aspect of their duality. And it's like, okay, yeah, you can cover yourself in your period blood, and you can do all this shit that, you know, you didn't feel comfortable enough to do when you were a young Christian girl, but there's a little bit more to it, honey. So even some of the people that coined themselves shadow workers on Instagram or that I've seen, they're in the very early stages of just now embodying their darker aspects, but that doesn't mean that they're actually doing that work, you know? So if I can train some people within my apprenticeship program, and then y'all can actually be fucking shadow workers, that would be great. So yes, the live will be saved. So The next section is the true essence of sovereignty, becoming your own coder. So remember how I said the mother, as in the matriarch, the feminine, is the coder, and the patriarchal paradigm, men, masculine energy, that's the programmer more so. The code comes first. The code dictates what the fuck the program does, right? And so that's why they say the seed is only as perfect as the mother, because the seed is the code, and then what sprouts is the program. The expression by which it sprouts is the program, the pattern, or whatever. Not the other way around, the way the artificial world would like us to think. The artificial world is like fucking inside out, pretty much. And the natural world is right side in, or in harmony, in balance, in its natural state, where the feminine is honored, right? So becoming proficient in changing our energy signatures at will is so important, because as we awaken to the reality that this waking life is but a mere raindrop in a sea of alternate timelines across the multiverse. I know that was meaty, I'm sorry. In some of these other realms and dimensions and consciousness and things, many of us have achieved certain levels of mastery that have allowed us to activate strands of our spiritual DNA, or our coding, or our energy signature, that grant us the ability to essentially become our own coders, right? So again, for those of us that are of higher degrees in consciousness or higher spiritual rank, or that are more gifted and all this other stuff, those of us that are like that, we are coders. We can change our own code very rapidly, very quickly. We can clear karma at accelerated rates. And not only that, we can mutate other people's karma on sight. Creators are coders as well. These can be men and women, but creatives, those that are really, really, really creatives, like that's their thing, they're not overt raw coders, but the nature of how they express their consciousness is like that of a coder. They have to inhabit a level of feminine energy to be able to even do that. So on a more macro level, as far as your karmic disposition and your consciousness and shit, being able to change your own code at will allows you to be your own coder. And this is what sovereignty actually is. And this is, I'm going to tell y'all something. I have participated very briefly, because I just could not. I have enough birthrights to not just be stupid enough to be up in some stupid shit for about 4, 5, 6 years. All it needs take me a few months and I'll be like, all right, goodbye. These sovereignty movements that have y'all out here throwing away y'all homes and y'all cars and y'all lives and y'all whatever the fucks, under the impression that that makes you sovereign, that shit is artificial. Okay? It is not saying that it's artificial in the sense that it wouldn't work. I'm not saying that it's artificial in the sense that the shit don't have some standing in the artificial world, but the principle that I'm getting at is that it's artificial. A lot of people think that sovereignty movements like Moorish movements and sovereign citizen movements and all that stuff, they're reclaiming their birthrights. Not the fuck if they're not their own coders yet. And a lot of these motherfuckers, they end up fucking crazy, in jail, losing everything that they own. Fucking narcissists, cult leaders, they are off their fucking rockers. All of them, right? They're not their own coders. They're in the same fucking baseline energy signature as they were when they were a poor, impoverished black boy. They're in that same energy signature. And because they put on a fez and call themselves a fucking Moor, or put on a fucking cloak and call themselves a sovereign citizen, or become a hotep in appearance or on paper, it gives the illusion. This is more illusion magic here. Illusion magic is what holds the artificial paradigms together. Because they have the form without the substance, which is what the fuck they blaming the government for. Color of law, right? That's what they're blaming the government for. They're doing the same thing in principle, because your code didn't change. You're still in lack. You still have lack mentality. You're still in survival mode. Yeah, fiat this and this. You're still money hungry. You're still a penny pincher. That's the same poverty baseline energy signature that you had before you assumed this form without the fucking karmic spiritual substance. Right? So essentially, you're hopping from one jurisdiction to another. That's not sovereignty. That is not sovereignty. It's one artificial construct to another artificial construct. Both are the form without the substance. One looks like outright slavery and disempowerment and whatever the fuck, and the other looks like sovereignty, but you still have the karma that makes you animate these fucked up things. And if you cleared the karma, you wouldn't even fucking jurisdiction hop, because you would have cleared the karma. So you would have had your spiritual wealth. You would have had your protection. You would have had your abundance. You would have had your fulfillment. You would have aligned yourself with all the things that you feel that you need that fulfill you. Not all these egoic constructs that suggest that you're sovereign, but every fucking day you're fighting for your fucking life. In the name of sovereignty. Sovereignty is about being your own coder again. In spirit, in your breath. Not about giving up your house, giving up your car, giving up your fucking freedom, going to prison and all this other shit. No. Same fucking code. And honestly, if you make it out of that dumb shit, you have a fleeting chance at actually changing your code. Because you will have to feel all of the karma and all of the crazy shit that you just allowed yourself to go through. It's a powerful fucking catalyst, I'll say that. You want to be reminded of who you really are? Go into one of them movements. You're going to come out with your cap on straight. Like, I am this person. I am not that person. This is freedom. That is not freedom. It's going to help you to distinguish the fuck out of what is and what isn't. I give it that. But beyond that, y'all need to become your own coders. And stop letting people scam you into these ideas of wealth and freedom and abundance that you don't actually have without them. That you can't actually attract without them. Stop making people your gods. When you make a person or a thing your god, you let it dictate your coding. I think it might only be paused for you. Right? And for those of y'all that make it out, hats off. It takes a very strong mind and a very empowered spirit to make it out of any kind of cult. Be it a sovereignty movement, just a regular cult, whether your ass is with Nature Boy or Jim Jones or whoever the fuck. Whoever the fuck. If you made it out after 5 years, 5 weeks, 5 months, it don't fucking matter. You just proved that you're actually sovereign. Because you made it out. And you didn't make somebody else your God. And some people make it out and they go back to religion and make that their God. Whatever. But I just want to emphasize that because there's so many people falling into these pit holes of I'm sovereign because of all these artificial things. And I don't want any of us, if we can help it, to get caught up in that. You can't go to the tangible form of something before the unseen form. That's backwards. And again, that backwards shit is of the artificial world. To go after the paperwork and to go after the form and to go after the whatever physical manifestation and to totally ignore the karmic disposition that influenced the assumed form in the first place, that is backwards. That is not harmonious. That is not natural. That is not organic. That is not any of those things. And a lot of y'all spirits tell y'all from the get-go, I'm not about to sit here and file all this fucking paperwork. Yeah, because you actually got some kind of birthrights intact. Don't raffle them the fuck away. While you can help it. Or maybe you have to raffle them away, get stuck in the underworld with these motherfuckers, make your way out and reclaim them. I ain't biased of how that can go, of how that can unfold. But what I'm saying is, all of us want sovereignty. And all of us want freedom. And all of us want all these things. But we're doing it with the artificial approach. And we have to stop that shit. Yeah, I heard of Rod Hayes debunking a lot of that stuff. But I don't watch him, but I've heard that a lot of what I be saying, he's saying, but giving you the historical reference. So good for him. It's freeing people. Paper lords. Exactly. Paper lords. Paper lords. And they're going crazy. And to be real, exactly. Real sovereignty is knowing your divine rights, comprehending commerce on all planes, and moving on your own accord. Not just binding yourself to the artificial realm in another jurisdiction. you know. So shout out to Rod Hayes for dismantling that, because there needs to be a man dismantling it. If it's a woman, it's going to be like, oh, but if it's a man that actually can back the shit up, I think that's healthy balance. So prior to doing our own coding of our energy signatures, guess who was doing the coding for us, right? Guess who was doing the coding for us? Before we coded our own energy signatures, guess who does the coding for us? Governments, movies, religion, school systems, further along in your journey, cult leaders, abusive lovers, narcissists, sociopaths, whatever. These are karmic manifestations or karmically induced avatars or characters that are there to mirror your lack of sovereignty thereof, your lack of personal responsibility of maintaining your own checks and balances. They're there to mirror exactly that, right? And guess who was doing the reinforcing thereafter? Once these things were coding your energy signature, what reinforces them? Our parents, our peers, music, the news, etc. So we can't reach any level of sovereignty, autonomy, or freedom if we can't manage to do our own internal coding, which dictates the subconscious algorithm that directly influences the nature by which our material reality assumes form. So again, if you try to target the material reality before the non-material reality, you're doing it in an artificial way. You're doing it backwards. That is what this patriarchal system, or this toxic patriarchal system, is built upon, doing shit backwards. And it doesn't matter if it's a cult or an organization or whatever. If you see any of them doing the shit backwards, it's not natural. And if it's not natural, you can't be sovereign. You can't get any real spiritual birthrights from it, because it's out of harmony with nature, with what's natural for us. You know? So, what are karmic contracts and how are they formed? This last section is on clearing karmic contracts and how they form, and then I'm going to be finished. Karmic contracts are formed through what I like to call cosmic consent. Okay? Now, save your questions on all of that stuff for tomorrow too, because I would love to lean into that, just so I can free a lot of minds and mutate some of y'all DNA on site if I have to, because that spell work is crazy. And I have the prana to dismantle that shit, if anything. So, karmic contracts are formed through what I like to call cosmic consent. To understand what this means in principle, think about the questions that we all have asked God at some point in our lives about why certain people go hungry, why certain people suffer, and why certain people are dealt an all-around unlucky hand in life despite how good their hearts are. Now, fast forward a bit to when you spiritually awakened, so to speak, and it dawned on you that somehow, some way, we must have chosen to incarnate here to learn certain lessons, clear certain karmas, and attend what many rever as Earth School. The same type of cosmic consent that comes off as unconscious, or the hand that life dealt us in terms of like incarnating in things, in principle, is the same type of cosmic consent on a more micro level, though, that forms contracts between ourselves and people, places, and things. So when you form a karmic contract and it's like, why would I choose that? Why would I attract that? Why would I settle for that? There's an unconscious element to it. Like, logically, you would never want that for yourself. But somehow, here you are with 5 babies with a nigga that tried to shoot you, right? That's cosmic consent. Because something about that situation, about that dynamic, about that experience is going to draw out something, dormant, repressed, whatever, to help you clear karma. And it's only by way of that unique combination of experiences and things like that that you'll be able to do that. And like I said, think about it. If it was left up to us, and if we left it up to like our own selves to like curate the experiences that will allow us to clear karma, we probably wouldn't clear no fucking karma, because we don't want to be in pain. We don't want to go through what would actually karmically be of enough depth and significance to draw that shit out, right? So to form the karmic contract, a level of engagement or trading, which is commerce, of karmic resonance Okay? Karmic resonance is not necessarily about whether it's negative or positive. Karmic resonance means there is a link between your energy signature and the energy signature of something else, and they're connected, meaning their interfacing will cause some kind of a release of life force, right? And it'll feel irresistible. You'll have this like fatal attraction to it, even if it's toxic, even if it's unhealthy, even if everything in your logical mind says don't do it, you're going to do it anyway, right? So there has to be a karmic resonance. And when there's a karmic resonance, usually we cosmically consent to the experience, right? And that's when the contract is formed. And like I said, it can be expressed negatively or positively, right? On a conscious or unconscious level. Karma has no bias when it comes to how spiritual commerce is pursued on the incarnate's behalf. Meaning, it's not about, oh, that's not self-love, oh, that's not nice, oh, that's not healthy. Cosmic consent and karma and all that, all that's required to actually clear karma, it doesn't operate like that. Like, it doesn't operate in right and wrong and left and right and da-da-da-da, right? That's how we interpret it as humans, because we be at war with our own duality. And the subtle nature of this type of cosmic consent is why most people are so severely unaware of when karma is being accrued or even paid. Half the time we pay off karma and we're unaware of it, so we go and accrue more than we damn near just paid off, and like we're just not aware of the whole transaction of the shit. So an example of unconscious contracting. Subconsciously, and this will get into a lot of the things that cause us to victimize ourselves and not take accountability, so I think this is important too. Subconsciously invasive things like the news, psychological abuse, propaganda, psyops, biochemical warfare, etc., that are able to successfully manipulate people's energy compositions, like what COVID did, that changed mad people's energy signatures and made them do shit that they probably didn't even realize that they were fucking doing or succumbing to, right? Due to karmic resonances that they're not aware of. So karmic resonances can be not being able to think for yourself, different levels of disempowerment, having no self-trust, not trusting your body. Whatever karmic resonance that COVID, the phenomena that is COVID triggered, that allowed your energy signature to be manipulated perhaps into getting a vaccine, or perhaps into fear mongering and harassing your family members into not trusting their immune systems, or into making other people want to fear death like you do. You know, all the different things that we all experienced when that shit first started, right? And they were only behaving like this because these subconsciously invasive things based on the karmic indebtedness of the individual, because it didn't really work on those of us that had a certain level of spiritual wealth. It kind of just whoosh, you know? So your energy signature was able to be manipulated because of your lack of karmic spiritual wealth, right? And when you're karmically indebted like that, you don't have the wealth to afford yourself the discernment and the protection and the what I would call common sense to avoid things like that, right? Due to these karmic resonances that you're not aware of, and are often committed by world leaders, governments, cults, criminals, etc. And why do they get away with it? Why are they not held accountable? Because while it is fucked up and we all know it's wicked and evil and this and this and that and unnatural, here's the thing. If you don't have any spiritual wealth, you can't afford to avoid that stuff. There is a greater karmic balance at play, right? That will not allow them to touch what many people call children of God, if you will. They are not allowed to touch people with a certain caliber of spiritual wealth. They won't be able to. They can't afford to. They're spiritually dead. They're corpses, okay? And there would have to be some part of you that is dead, that was not able to discern, that was not able to whatever, right? Not saying you're all around dead. Maybe that triggered you into a certain level of karmic clearing to reclaim some birthrights. It could have been a blessing in disguise, right? However, world leaders and governments and all these people that we just deem as evil, they have gotten cosmic consent from the people that suffer at their hands. And that cosmic consent is to help them pay off karma. And 2, because like I said, they can't spiritually afford otherwise. So, these invasive tools typically jade the victim's perception, and it's like a computer being hacked or malware being installed. And computers only get hacked when they're not secured. In our case, karmically speaking, this security will be reflected in our attunement to our energy signatures. This is how you secure yourself. So if you're thinking of these more artificial things, these artificially invasive things that are only able to affect us because we're karmically indebted and don't have spiritual wealth, or are completely spiritually bankrupt, right? So I'm not loud. You're loud, actually. Securing our systems, because we are the coders, right? A part of being a coder is securing that and preventing these kinds of malware from being implanted into your subconscious. And that takes a certain caliber of spiritual wealth. And what that looks like is attunement to our energy signatures, how much karmic clearing we do or don't do, and the maintenance of our spiritual checks and balances thereof. So they get away with it because they know that if they gain your cosmic consent by way of failure to pay off karma, right? You're giving them consent in a way through your breath, through the density that you consent to, right? Through the cords that you have to certain artificial timelines and constructs. Now they get to animate just like a shadow worker would, same principle. Now these governments and these invasive entities, if you will, that we deem as evil, if you don't want to pay off your own karma, guess what they get to do? They get to animate that karma just like us shadow workers do. Police brutality, killings, abuse, narcissism, sociopathic behavior. When we don't have a certain caliber of spiritual wealth to protect us from that or grant us the discernment and all that other stuff that we would need to remain, protected and guarded or whatever, they get to do that because now we're giving them cosmic consent, right? So they get the cosmic consent of the people, or the masses, as people will put it, because they're karmically indebted. And once you're karmically indebted and you're repressing certain things, they get to be the shadow workers on more macro level. I mean, relationships and stuff more micro, but governments and world leaders and all that other artificial world stuff, they get to be shadow workers or play the role of shadow workers on a more macro level. So if you read my shadow work ebook, in principle, just take that same concept of what us shadow workers do and expand it to that of these artificial world leaders. But the difference would be, we're conscious of the fact that we're helping bring things into balance. We're conscious of the fact that we're animating certain people's shadow aspects so that they can go to the underworld and pay off this. These things are just dead. So their survival and their sustainability is literally directly linked to us remaining karmically indebted. Whereas with the shadow worker, not so much. But in principle, when you're karmically indebted to whatever extent, if it's to an extreme enough extent, you often end up giving cosmic consent to these entities to be the evil forces in your life that they are, until you pay off enough karma to experience otherwise. And for some people whose baseline energy signatures don't change or aren't that flexible, they live lifetimes and lifetimes of that shit, right? So they gain the cosmic consent of these karmically indebted people through simple paid attention and belief, influenced by their own unconscious karmic resonances, with no spiritual wealth to protect or secure them. And they have chosen to engage in commerce and trade with said entities. When you go and work a job, when you check into a hospital, when you have your birth at the hospital, and let these people touch your baby, when you do all this stuff. I'm not perpetuating any bias here. However, what I'm saying is, you've given cosmic consent to experience painful things like that so that you can be empowered, hopefully, if you make it out of the underworld. Some people never make it out of the underworld. They remain in that victimization. They remain in that disempowerment. They remain in that anger. They remain in that resentment. They remain in that white people are the problem. They're our oppressors and fuck them crackers. They remain in that shit, right? Underworld shit. It's all good. But as far as empowerment and sovereignty and becoming your own coder, it's not really sustainable in that regard. So in conclusion, I could go on and on and on about energy signatures due to the simple fact that our awareness and comprehension of the role they play in our karmic clearing processes, one, bloodline work, shadow work, and often overlooked phenomena in our everyday lives, is vital to maintaining the spiritual wealth acquired from these experiences. Otherwise, we pretty much fumbled the spiritual bag. And in order for these karmic clearing cycles to successfully thrust us into higher, more harmonious degrees in consciousness, and in order for us to refrain from further misdirecting our empathy in a way that does us as well as others more harm than good, karmically speaking, these topics must be explored more. That way, our foundational understanding of karmic clearing, energy work, healing, spirituality, and all things unseen isn't trivial to the point of encouraging mass bypassing, which is what entrenches Instagram, unfortunately. But practical enough for the younger spirits to find value in, right? So even if you're not in a higher degree in consciousness, if we start having these conversations more, even if it's in a lesser degree, it can still be comprehended in that lesser degree and applied, which takes a gift on the teacher's behalf, obviously. So that is my essay. I'm stiff. I'm going to stretch after this. So again, guys, if you guys have any questions about the intricacies of this essay, of any of the things that I talked about, you have to sign up for my question and answer tomorrow on Zoom. Like I said, it is $20. My Cash App is there. My PayPal and my Zelle is in my Instagram stories. Go there now because it might be deleted by tomorrow. Make sure, I hope you guys wrote down your questions throughout the duration of this live. If you want to send love donations, you can use my Cash App or my PayPal or my Zelle, just the same as if you're signing up for tomorrow's Zoom. The Zoom is at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, just like today. So once you guys send your payments, make sure you include your email in the notes section on Zelle, PayPal, or Cash App, because I won't be able to send you the Zoom entry info, and that'll be on you. Like I can't, help you. However, if you sign up and you can't make it or you miss it for some reason, if you at least signed up in advance, you will receive the recording. I have an entire spreadsheet of everybody that has signed up. And as far as shadow workers, if there's anybody in here that particularly resonated with the shadow work segment, if you're a shadow worker, if you realized you were a shadow worker just by listening to me, or if you want to see if you are, go get my ebook called Intro to Understanding Life as a Shadow Worker, Energy Signatures, Shape-Shifting, and Underworld Work. This essay serves as a foundation to understanding that work, because that work gets way more into the intricacies of underworld work and timing and pulling out of the underworld. I go into the limitations of commercialized shadow work, as you guys may see entrenched on Instagram, like journal prompts and stuff like that. Not to say that it doesn't have its place for beginners. However, I don't want you guys to think that shadow work is just a simple matter of logically saying, oh, what are my triggers? What make me feel uncomfortable? Let me write about it. That's just getting you comfortable with the very much taboo nature of it. And the apprenticeship for the shadow work thing, where I'm going to give those 4 trainings on how to do all those things, that is limited for this first round. So the first round, I'm only accepting 50 women, and it's going to be for the month of September. It's going to start September 1st and go throughout the month of September. I will have just given birth by the end of September into maybe beginning of October. So I won't start the second round until after I'm a little bit further in postpartum. And so the next round, you would have to wait a little while. But until then, you could just sit and fester on the book. A lot of this, like, you probably wouldn't even need the apprenticeship unless you really can't control your gift. And the book will put a lot into perspective, and you'll just automatically know what I'm talking about and make the adjustments however you need to. But anyway, I go into what makes someone a shadow work. Because remember, like I said, it's not about an ability. Like, I am a shadow worker because I can do this. Like, it's about a responsibility that you have and an awareness that you hold. That's what makes you the shadow worker, not necessarily the fact that you draw out shadows, because we all do it unconsciously. The apprenticeship does not come with the ebook. You would have to read the ebook, and then if you're interested in the apprenticeship program, then you would register thereafter. Now, my apprenticeship program is low maintenance. I know a lot of y'all like, bitch, you still doing eye readings, you still finishing the fulfillment code, you about to give birth, and you doing all this shit, and you a single mother. Yes, that's why I said that the apprenticeship is low maintenance. So it don't take nothing. I just sat on here for 3 hours. It don't take nothing for me to do a Zoom meet and host a chat room. That's really what it's going to entail. But I'm going to be going into the intricacies of how to actually do shadow work as a shadow worker without getting stuck in the underworld, without unconsciously forming karmic contracts and all that stuff. Sidebar, my birthday is September 14th. A couple of y'all are asking in the comments. Then I just went into energy signatures and just kind of pieced some things together for y'all. But in the book, I'm going to go into energy signatures and shape-shifting as it pertains to when you're contracted as a shadow worker and it's time to shape-shift, what that change is like. And then your responsibility as a shadow worker. This is pretty much being responsible for your behaviors and the things that you pull out of people, and not doing them a disservice, again, because of misdirected empathy and things like that. So if y'all want to get that ebook, the link is in my bio. If you're like, whoa, I want direct hands-on training with that, the apprenticeship, like I said, low maintenance program. It's not something that's going to require you to show up like the fulfillment code. Like my fulfillment code, the last round that I'm doing, that I'm actually in the middle of right now, I'm in week 6. I'm going into week 6. This is an 8-week program, the fulfillment code. The apprenticeship program is not that meaty and not that in-depth. With the fulfillment code, I have modules. It's on Thinkific. You get workbooks. It's not all of that. So that's how I'm able to actually balance that out, because I would really just have to show up and speak and answer your questions and mutate your DNA and help your energy signatures to change and show you what that looks like, and have exercises for you to practice, and using different modalities to trigger the temporary change, be that music or working with the olfactory bulb and all those different things. So that I can do that shit in my sleep. So week 1 will be about energy signature attunement and learning the subtleties of when your energy signature is changed, long term or short term. Week 2 of the apprenticeship is gauging an individual's cosmic consents and the parallels of cosmic consent as it pertains to shadow work and reincarnation, just so that you can understand in principle what cosmic consent really entails. Week 3 is about becoming proficient at spiritual wealth assessments before entering karmic contracts. And then week 4 is about pulling out of the underworld in a timely enough fashion to avoid getting trapped in karmic crossfire and limbo. So yeah, that'll be the first 30 days, and then I will pick back up after those 30 days, after I give birth, and so on and so forth, until I feel like it doesn't resonate anymore. Then I'm going to stop. And then for those of you guys that are seeking my psycho spiritual services, I don't offer it. My bad. My battery's going to die soon. So I don't offer eye readings and shit to the general public anymore. But I do have a bloodline clearing bundle that is under the Collective Womb Alliance, and that comes with the breath correction session and helping you to build up your prana. It comes with in-depth eye readings depending on your variation style. So if you're a single woman, you can get one. If you're a single woman with one child, you guys both get eye readings. If you're a full family with the father, a mother, and 2 children, y'all all get eye readings. The mother is the one that gets the breathwork exercises and all the other things, because she's the coder. So the wealth or the established and maintained wealth of the bloodline, as per her trinity that she's adjoined with the man and the offspring thereof, that's going to be in her hands. So even though the entire family can get eye readings, this is so that the mother can understand what her duty is, karmically speaking, with keeping the karmic cleanliness of the bloodline intact. And then so that she can, you know, talk to the father or reassess her relationship with the father, or pivot and change her signature how she needs to, and so on and so forth. Or if it's just a single mother and 3 kids, I have packages for every family variation, because this bloodline clearing bundle is specifically for maintaining the bloodline. It's not for not maintaining the bloodline, maintaining the cleanliness of the bloodline and the karmic balance, if you will. You also get exclusive membership to the Collective Womb Alliance. That comes with a whole portal of resources regulated by state territory. I still have to upload a lot of things there. I have the group chat, and there's a lot of resources there as well. I'm always adding things, and so on and so forth. And then free copy of Surviving the Conscious Community, which that damn book. I don't be writing it sometimes because I stop, because I'm damn near working through some of the topics that I'm talking about there. But it's at a decent place. So whenever it's published, you get a free copy. And that is all, folks. So again, if you have questions about tonight's live, you can attend the question and answer tomorrow. And if any of those things appeal to you, be it the ebook on shadow work, the apprenticeship on shadow work, or the bloodline clearing bundle, you can inquire about or book any of those, or just an appreciation donation. I don't give a damn. I just really want you guys to think about these things, because like just little small subtle things that we don't really pay attention to really can affect the trajectory of how our consciousness expresses itself on this timeline and beyond. And the closer we can get to controlling that and being conscious of that and holding awareness of that, I think we'll actually get to start experiencing true sovereignty in the ways that we would like to. Okay? So thank you guys again for attending. I'm going to end this and save it before Instagram does something crazy and y'all don't even get to watch this. And I will be uploading it to YouTube as well. So, yeah. Have a good night.